participants, we are now live.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. I understand that state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come. Sydney Charles, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak.
Councilmember Jones.
Present. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good morning. Thank you.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I'm present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Quinona Sanchez.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members.
Good morning.
Councilmember Bass. Councilmember Squilla.
Mark Squilla, present.
Councilmember Dom.
Good morning, Madam Chair and colleagues. Present.
Councilmember Brooks.
Good morning, Madam Chair and colleagues. I'm present.
Okay. Thank you. A quorum of the committee has been established and this hearing is now called to order. This is the public hearing of the Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homeless regarding resolution number 210838. Ms. Schultz, will you please read the title of the resolution?
Resolution 210838, authorizing the Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homeless to conduct hearings to identify barriers and solutions to permanently preserving community gardens and open spaces in the city of Philadelphia.
Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this purpose. I want to start by saying thank you to the sponsor of this resolution, Councilmember Brooks, for putting forward a hearing on this really important topic. As the building boom has continued across our city and in my district in particular, we've seen so many of our precious community gardens and green spaces at risk, and these spaces mean so much to community. They're places where people go for respite. They're places where people come together to connect as neighbors, and we have to find ways to preserve them. That they're a very important part of our neighborhood culture. And so thank you so much to Councilmember Brooks for this discussion. And with that, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Brooks for any opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to my council colleagues who were able to join us for this hearing today. Preserving Philadelphia's community gardens and open space that are currently encumbered by U.S. bank liens and on the verge of being irreparably lost is something that I know is of grave concern to all of us. We can all agree that these sacred neighborhood-run green spaces are essential for creating safe, livable communities in every zip code. And we can also agree that community members who have taken it upon themselves to care for these spaces, remediate toxic soil, and beautify their neighborhood should not be stripped of the land ownership so that predatory developers can displace them for profit. We agree about the end goal, ensuring that long-term preservation of these essential community gardens. So we are here today to better understand what the barriers to long-term preservation are and to identify solutions. It's time to get to work, and I want to thank everyone who was here to speak today and all the concerned constituents who have signed up for public testimony. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the committee that would like to give opening comments?
Madam Chair, if I may for a moment.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I also wanted to acknowledge Councilmember Brooks and her work in this and making this a citywide issue. As many of you know, as the author of the Land Bank legislation, we were very intentional in carving out and prioritizing green spaces in our public land works, and I know you'll hear from them momentarily. Our office has worked with our social justice lawyers and our partners like NGT, who you will also hear, who has really led my understanding on this issue and provided much assistance and guidance. For many gardeners who want to establish their capacity and be independent, the power in our ability to really work through this is our ability to work together, and forums like the one that Councilmember Brooks is creating today are what will help us keep us focused around how do we do this and how do we protect these vital spaces. For me, NGT offers the structure, the demonstrated capacity, and will help us ensure the preservation happens for long-term growth and sustainability, not only in folks acquiring this land and having the capacity. Through our work, we've learned around water conservation, water access, and really waiving fees and costs to gardeners as an important tool that the city can do. I still think there's much more we can do, and I want to thank Councilmember Brooks and you, Madam Chair, for continuing to bring this to the forefront, and I look forward to working with all of you. I want to thank all of gardeners and all the folks who have done tremendous work. And this work sometimes goes unrecognized. I call it the sweat equity that has tremendous value because the work of the sweat equity of the volunteers can never be quantified or qualified. We know it costs us $750 to clean a lot, to remediate a lot. So if you imagine the years of work the gardeners do, you can just imagine the amount of money that they save the city. And so I want to make sure that when we're having this conversation, we're adding and we're putting the numbers and the value to the hard labor related to this for the volunteers. So thank you, Madam Chair. Look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Councilmember Quinones Sanchez, for all of your hard work on the land bank and around saving these gardens in our city. We appreciate you. Ms. Charles, will you please call the first panel of witness we have to testify this morning?
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would like
apologize.
to acknowledge the presence of Councilmember Cindy Bass. Good
Thank
morning.
you very much.
You're welcome. Okay. Ms. Charles, do you want to call the first panel?
Got it. Sheriff Rochelle Bilal, Philadelphia Sheriff's Office.
Sheriff Bilal, are you there and connected?
Sheriff Bilal isn't in right yet. In fact, she just texted me and told me she's about 5 minutes away. Is it possible that we can move her testimony to later on? Or once she arrives, I can contact you. And I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce myself. This is Tariq El Shabazz, the undersheriff.
That's okay. Councilmember Brooks, is that okay with you?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you, and I
We can
apologize.
move to the second panel.
Okay, fantastic. Ms. Charles?
Panel 2, Michael Moran, Iglesias Garden, Elizabeth Waring, Holly Street Neighbors Community Garden, and Betty Ferguson, Belmont Alliance Civic Association.
Okay. Michael Moran, are you there and connected?
I am. How's my audio?
Sounds great. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'll start off with the testimony. Hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm grateful for your time. My name is Michael Gonzalo Moran. Today, I have the great responsibility to speak on behalf of my fellow neighbors, and I'm also here as a representative of the Iglesias Garden. My task today is to summarize part of my life experience and to help create more land security for our communities. At the Iglesias Garden, we partake in typical garden activities. We cultivate land to grow food, we host workshops and events for adults and children, and we've created an ideal environment to strengthen and grow our community. The Iglesias Garden includes our community garden located at the intersection of North Lawrence and Arlington Streets. and the collection of side lots, gardens, and open spaces in the area around surrounding the garden. The community has worked hard to preserve these open spaces because we understand that open spaces are essential to a healthy development of a community. But to create this peaceful place, we have overcome many obstacles. Shortly after its inception, an important lot to the garden was sold to a developer who used questionable tactics to acquire the property. Through this incident, we realized that a land grab was occurring all around our neighborhood, and our new reality became that for the garden to thrive, the community around it had to survive. So we began to focus our efforts on land security, and the garden became a command post for the public's battle against gentrification and land insecurity. But before I talk further about our efforts and experiences at the garden, allow me a moment to tell you more about myself and my personal experiences with gentrification and land insecurity. I'm a first generation American, an entrepreneur, and I'm here before you today because a side lot saved my life. For almost 30 years, my mother made every attempt to secure that lot next door to our home. As a kid, I remember going to numerous meetings with her and walking out empty handed because no one had answers for us. But regardless, my family continued tending to that lot. And then one day on 2018, the sheriff shows up and informs us that the lot is going up for sheriff sale. It was at this moment we realized someone had finally found a solution to our problem, but it wasn't to our benefit. Philadelphia is often referred to as the poorest big city. Well, I grew up in the Badlands. That's a neighborhood in the North Philly section of the city, more specifically in the 19133, 19140 zip codes, both of which are some of the poorest zip codes in the country, and they have the highest concentration of U.S. bank lien lots. About 7 years ago, I was able to move my family to a home we rehabbed in the 19122 zip code, in the same neighborhood where the garden is located. To our surprise, people are now referring to this area as the fancy part of town. But then I showed them what the exterior of my home looks like, and they can't comprehend what they're seeing. 3 years ago, our home was damaged when an out-of-state developer began a shoddy rehab project on the house on the row home next door. After the incident, we contacted LN9, our insurance company, and we've reached out to several council people, and still no results. The developers involved have abandoned the project, but the damages to our home still remain. And now my house is slowly collapsing while other developers continue to build around us. We also spent many years trying to acquire a city-owned vacant parcel adjoining our home, but only after years of back and forth with the city, the revenue department, and the land bank were we able to finally acquire that property just a few weeks ago. But now, as a homeowner, if I want to develop that land and, for example, expand my home, I have to pay $50,000 to the land bank. Essentially, my life experiences have unnaturally led me to become a land speculator and developer. So being at home, at peace with my family, has become secondary to our efforts of securing our home. Growing up, I've personally been impacted by many of the underdevelopment and vacant land issues that are common in my neighborhood. I've experienced firsthand how hard it is to address these problems and how powerless residents can be when the city and developers can do whatever they want without input from longtime residents. Although this is my personal experience, this is not an isolated event, and in many ways my story is not unique. I have accepted that this is not personal and that it is a systematic failure within the city. My motivation for this effort is that my son and future generations don't have to be impacted by gentrification in the way that we were. The Iglesias Garden has been successful at securing some land for open spaces and for our community members with side lots. But for every victory, our approach has to change because the process for soliciting land in Philadelphia is broken. The progress we make with the Philadelphia Land Bank does not guarantee us progress with the Philadelphia Housing Authority. And recently at the Garden, we have been focused on protecting several parcels and side lots that are impacted by the U.S. bank liens fiasco. At the Garden, we learned a few years ago that two of our properties would be nearly impossible to save because of the U.S. bank liens. We also learned that we're not alone in our predicament. When the sheriff announced that the tax foreclosure auctions were going to resume, we knew that our lots and thousands of other properties were all at risk. Over the summer, we began to canvass every U.S. bank lien encumbered vacant lot in Council District 7, where the Garden is located. We had canvassed nearly 400 impacted properties throughout the district, identified more than 100 lots already in use, and in well-managed side lots and neighborhood open spaces. We have met with land bank council members and neighborhood gardens trust and other city officials looking for help. And once again, we walked away empty-handed because no one had answers for us. We spoke with numerous residents in Kensington, Frankfort, Fairhill, Juniata, all that have invested their own time and money to preserve these spaces, even though they can't own the land. Because under current policies, it's more challenging for gardeners and community members to acquire these properties, even if they had the cash necessary to complete the process. We've learned that almost every neighbor we spoke to with a U.S. bank lien lot has previously tried and failed to purchase the properties for a variety of legal, technical, or financial reasons. But we have also spoken with many people who have lost U.S. bank lien lots in the past 2 years. We have identified that 200 plus U.S. bank lien properties that were sold between July 2019 and July 2021, 80% are in communities that are at or near the poverty line, and 90% are in a census tract where the majority of residents are people of color. Our research shows that dispositions have been to LLCs who are assembling multiple properties. Just 6 real estate shell companies have been responsible for 25% of all U.S. bank lien lots acquired since July 2019. Once again, someone found a solution to our problem, but it wasn't to our benefit. For clarity, what we want is for the city to fix this problem and to work with residents and community groups to preserve this land. We're asking for the city to fully fund the land bank to acquire all 2,000 plus parcels. We want community control vacant land, which includes giving local residents and community groups the rights of first refusal to acquire these properties. We're also asking the sheriff to fix the broken sheriff sale process. This includes improving the inadequate notification process, ending the completely inaccessible internet-based sheriff sales, and committing to working with community groups to ensure that properties that are in use are not auctioned to developers. The neighborhood is not against redevelopment, but in a community that hasn't had sidewalks for decades, we often wonder, who are we redeveloping for? Once again, thank you for your time, and power to the gardeners.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moran, for your testimony, but also for your work in advocacy. I'm going to propose that we go back to Sheriff Bilal because I know that she has a tight time schedule this morning. So good morning, Sheriff. You're on mute.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Absolutely. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. I'm Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. Good morning, council persons. And good morning to the committee. Appreciate this opportunity. I'm Sheriff Rochelle Bilal, and I'm pleased to provide testimony on resolution number 210838 regarding solutions to preserving community gardens and open spaces, to be held by the Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and Homelessness. I want to thank Council Member Kendra Brooks for inviting me to speak for you today. In my reply letter to City Council on October the 11th, 2021, regarding these issues, my office has seen a path forward. I want to begin my testimony with the facts. I have learned since being elected as sheriff of the city of Philadelphia. Here's some history. This problem goes back to 1997, when the city of Philadelphia decided to sell off tax liens on 33,000 properties to private lien holders. The city raised $72 million through the sale, but the bond sale to pay for that money failed, and the city defaulted on $42 million in bonds that were secured by those liens. This meant that thousands of the properties with liens on them were then privatized. Many of them, including so many community gardens and open spaces, ended up in hands of the U.S. Bank, which plans to sell all its remaining liens on the sell properties within the next 2 years. The law firm is Lineberger, Guggen, Blair, and Sampson, who is the firm hired to dispose of these liens. But there is a solution. The city of Philadelphia can buy back these lots for the community gardens and open spaces. Personally, as a proud member of this community, I understand the urgency to resolve this crisis. And we all have a job to do. The office of the sheriff has mandated by the Philadelphia courts to execute the orders of the court. We must abide by the orders of the court or face criminal charges ourselves. Our office has taken several steps to keeping families in their homes. For instance, our office took a critical approach to prioritizing alerts on the properties going up for sheriff sale so that the concerned parties know they are going up for sale and that our staff knows to be on the lookout for immediate removal from a sale. When we decided to go virtual in April of 2021 using the well-known online platform Bid for Assets, our partners, we saw immediate responses and a quick turnaround time in cases where homes listed were quickly removed from the sale, even in mid-sale. For example, with 600 and something properties going up, by letting our constituent service, letting people know that this was happening and giving them the information to help them save their homes, it went from 600 and something to 17. I continue to stay committed, ready and willing to help in any way we can within the letter of the law. We are, our group, and then you can see my staff members on here too, willing and able to work with any organization to help save these. And I understand the community gardens, this is a crisis to them. We understand the emotions behind holding on, developing, keeping it clean, making a garden into a property that just blighted our neighborhoods, because I come from North Philly and I know just how the city in decades had let our neighborhoods go down. Communities like Communities Gardens came in to save these lots. They came in to develop them, made gardens, made spaces, so the neighborhood won't continue to be a blight in this city. This is a crisis for them. And we don't have a problem with working with families and those community gardens to help save this. But I understand that there was US Bank is trying to sell them off. We can only do what our job is here. But it's up to you to be able to save those properties. You can buy back those properties. To my understanding, there was a couple of ways to do that. Then you can work out with the community gardens on how to finish helping them with those spaces. We will continue to work with you, city council members. We continue to work with community gardens. And we just hope that this issue can be resolved because our community needs them. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Sheriff Bilal, for your testimony and your work. I have a couple questions before I open it up to members of the committee and the sponsor. Um, can you expound on how the Sheriff's Office has engaged with community groups since the resumption of sheriff sales to address concerns around losing community gardens to private development?
What we did was we changed our terms of sale in these issues. Basically, sending the information, once community gardens let us know that these properties was going up for sale and they were community gardens, we put in our terms of sale that from this point on, we need to know whether it was pre-pandemic or post-pandemic. We needed to know whether they were occupied or not occupied. We looked at them. We had community gardens send us a list of the community gardens, because when we get it, we don't get a thing that says this is a community garden. We just get a address and we get a number. So they let us know that these are community gardens. We sent the letter over to the attorneys who are the ones that are bound to put these properties up for sale, and let them know that these are community gardens and they have been taken care of by these individuals and how they're trying to bring the neighborhoods up. And the attorney on the writ basically pulled them from the sale. So therefore they did not go to sale. And so, but to maintain this, we don't know how that's going to be maintained, because you're talking about US Bank. US Bank wants to make money. So if they begin to continuously put it up, I don't know how long they're going to be sympathetic and want to pull these back. But we send them every time. Once community gardens let us know these are the spaces, we send it to them. We explain to them what they are, and they pull them from the sale.
Okay. Um, is there any way, is it at all possible for us to place a moratorium on sending properties encumbered by the U.S. Bank liens to auction while we, figure out how to acquire the properties?
Tariq? I'll let my legal person in reference to a moratorium.
Good morning, and thank you for having us. We don't have the power or the jurisdiction to issue a moratorium or to stay or to postpone those particular properties based on them being community properties. What we have been doing and we will continue to do is notify all of the players. And if we notify the players, obviously the attorney on the writ can pull that property. But we also are trying to awaken everyone to how this problem existed, how it began, and what we can do against it. These are properties that normally were controlled by the city and still can be controlled by the city. If we have those properties in advance and we have the ability to talk to individuals in advance, we can negotiate to the best of our ability to have them pull the property because it's being dealt with. And then hopefully those individuals that are dealing with the property will have an opportunity to purchase it, to have it to the end of it. Unfortunately, as the enforcement arm of the court, in other words, enforcing the orders to conduct a sale, we don't have the ability to have a moratorium. However, if you give us, if what is presented is a legal reason, and I say that because it's a legal process, that there's something about that property that should cause the court to pause because the property is being negotiated to buy, the property is owned by or is earmarked for the land bank, or actually earmarked by somebody actually tending to the property, because the land bank is another issue, but that's not what you're asking. Then we will be able to address that and even present it to the court, suggesting to the court that maybe we can stop that particular property. But that would have to be on a one-to-one basis based upon a reason that we can submit to the court.
Have we sorry. I'm sorry.
No, I'm finished.
Have we ever, thank you. Have we ever explicitly asked the court about more of a broad-based moratorium for these U.S. bank lien properties?
We haven't, and we haven't because of this. Once they become U.S. Bank, GRB, but more so U.S. Bank, they are private owners. These private owners go through the process of getting a judgment and a lien and an order to sell that property. What is supposed to happen, and unfortunately it isn't, because the community gardens are not even aware that it's probably going through this process. It's supposed to be objected to and litigated then, and it's at that point that before Judge Fox and those particular courts can hear argument and make a determination whether or not there is some legal reason to pause it. By the time we get it as an order to conduct it. So we're looking at emergency situations where we can contact the court and say, Judge, on this individual property, but we can't do it we don't have the authority, unfortunately, to do it as a moratorium.
Does it make sense to ask the court or to make that explicit request and let them tell us that we can't do it explicitly?
Well, respectfully, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense to ask the court to do something that we don't have a legal reason to do. What we need is we need assistance. We need assistance from the city. We need assistance from the law department, from GRB, from Linebarger, and from U.S. banks, that we recognize this. We will identify it. We will let you know. And they should, I submit, they should be willing to pull it. And if they're willing to pull it, then we can stop it mid-sale, during the sale, or even after the sale, and reverse the sale. And one of the reasons that we believe we can convince them, or we try to convince them, is because it's economic for the city. It's economic. It's safe spaces for kids on that block to play. There are gardens that are beautifying those properties. So in essence, we're gaining economically. The city is gaining economically. It's gaining in value. But a private agency, a private attorney, is making money from it. So at the end of the day, he's not interested, or she's not interested sometimes in doing anything like that. And because it's a private sale, the court, I would submit to you, doesn't have the authority in a private sale just to stop all private sales of properties like.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Brooks?
Yes, I have a follow-up on Councilmember Gautier's question. Wait, let me pause for a minute. I want to thank the sheriff for being completely responsive around this issue. Immediately when we realized that we needed to do something and we sent a letter, she was willing to just get on and have like a detailed conversation about this issue. And I thank you for your support in helping to navigate this with my team. Um, my question was a follow-up to Councilmember Gautier's question, just for clarity. What would need to happen for the share sales of the parcels that are owned by U.S. bank liens to be paused, even if it's only until the permanent solution is reached? Like, what are the steps that we would need to do?
Councilwoman, that is, thanks for the question. That is a difficult question because again, it's a private sale. It's a lot easier for us to do that when it's controlled by the revenue department or is controlled by the tax department, because those are city agencies that we can work with our partners and ask them to let's pause these things while we find a solution. When it comes to private people, it's kind of like if I can use the example of you, and I know you wouldn't be doing these things, but let me just kind of make it a little personalized. You win a judgment, or somebody, or you buy a judgment from someone else, or you buy a lien from someone else. You go to court, you litigate it, and you win the judgment. As a private person, once you win that judgment, it gives you the right to ask for an order, and if you get that order, it gives you the right to collect the money on the judgment that you've won. So we don't have the authority to kind of stop a private judgment from being executed, with the exception of some other type of legal entity or legal question, legal issue. And if there is a legal issue, for example, do they really have is it a valid a lien because that property was somehow owned by the people that are doing some things? I heard the testimony earlier about people doing work. Does it give them some priority or some right over that property? That's a question that needs to be decided. And if that is a question, then we can act upon that question. So one of the steps is we need to make some determinations, because people are doing a lot of things on these properties. We need to figure out, and when I say we, I'm talking about as a community, we need to figure out, do they garner any legal means to that property based upon taking care of that property for that long? And sometimes people even paying taxes and things on those properties. If they're doing that, do they have a legal means or an interest in that property now that is in conflict with the lien? And if they do, that needs to be decided by the court before that can be sold. So they would have a right. Do they have a right to litigate it? So the thing, in answer to that question, we have to we have to unite with some people, and I would submit some volunteers from the legal community that will look into whether or not someone garnered legally a question of them having a right to that property. And if they have a right, do they have a right to contribute? Do they have and it contributed to it? Do they have a right to ask it to be paused so that they can purchase it at a different level? Can the city intervene and say that because it was a community space, that this is a property that now we don't want you to sell it for all the interest that you put on a $10,000 lien, that now you got interest of $60,000. We can do it. We can work it out. Is there some type of fee agreement? Is there some type of payment plan? Those are answers that I think that we have to address. But it does, unfortunately, we don't have the ability to do that. But we definitely will have the ability that if that's a question, then we can say we need to pause this because there's a question as to ownership, a question as to value, to the end of that. Those are legal type questions.
Okay, so just to be clear, the city should be working to identify what kind of ownership already exists with these spaces. That's right.
Yes.
And then we can try it with the courts as well.
Yes, because if in fact there is ownership by one of the community gardens or somebody that has a lot next to their house that they've been taking care of for 10 years, if there's an interest, then that person has an issue to argue whether or not they have an interest, a priority interest. Now, understand the judgment. If the judgment is bought from the city, the U.S. Bank has a right to say we bought that judgment, but the city also has a right to intervene and recognize that maybe I should buy that judgment back or buy that property back because we have this issue. And that can exist. And I think that's what the sheriff was addressing in terms of one of the solutions is buying back these safe spaces, buying back these community gardens. We're only going to do what we have to do.
Okay, so, and if there's no ownership rights identified, the city needs to be working directly with US banks to resolve these issues.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
all right, that makes.
Basically, Councilwoman Brooks, because the city sold these to the U.S. Bank to generate revenue in the city, and there has been a couple of opportunities that's presented prior to y'all coming on to council in order to buy these liens back, but council didn't take it up. So maybe revisiting that area under new council people that's there, that's interested in helping to save these safe spaces and these community gardens, may be an avenue that you all need to really look at.
Oh, thank you so much for that information, Sheriff. I have a few more questions. When is the next scheduled sheriff sale involving parcels encumbered by US bank liens?
You have that list, Melissa's in there from our director of real estate.
Next Friday, next week.
Next Friday. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we have a sense of urgency around this work. So since the date
Yes,
is so
ma'am.
soon, so folks are paying attention and get it on the record. And also, you
Councilwoman,
mentioned,
if you get that stuff to us, we'll take a look at that.
thank you.
Remember, we can stop during, prior to, and after.
Okay, we'll continue to work on that with you guys directly. You also mentioned that you can reverse a share sale after it's completed. I did not know that was an option. Can you explain how that works?
Tariq?
Yes, ma'am. I'm just calling up the director of real estate. Let her say a couple of words.
Good morning, council members. My name is Melissa Simpson. I'm the Director of Real Estate here at the Sheriff's Office. In the event that a property sells at sheriff's sale, there are options post-sale that one can take to reverse the sale. The first option would be a set-aside where once again, there has to be a legal reason for a judge to rule that the sale was invalid, but that can be filed with the courts for any property that's sold at sheriff's sale. The other option on tax cases is that there is a redemption period, which is 9 months from the date that the deed is acknowledged. And within that 9 month period, a majority of title companies will not allow the property to be sold because the previous owner does have that option to come back and get the property back. Once again, that is also a court filing, and it has to be ordered by the court that the property be redeemed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
So, one other thing, if in fact we get notification right after the sale has occurred, say later on that day or the next day, that the sale should not have happened, we can pull that sale and let the buyer know that the sale is invalidated. So there are various options that we have prior to, during, and after the sale.
Okay. Thank you for that. I have a few more questions about outreach in relation to tax lien sales. How are they currently posted and how much notice is given? And how does the sheriff reach out to communities about lots being slated to be sold?
So every property that goes up for sheriff's sale is posted at least 2 months prior to sale. As soon as we get the information, the handbills go out by the deputies, and every property is posted individually. So there will be notice on the property. The other location is that you'll see the information is once we enter the information in our system, it is then transferred to Bid for Assets website. So every sale that's upcoming, all of the properties are already imported into the Bid for Assets website. We've had some problems with our information on our website with the mapping and everything. So we're in the process of fixing that so that you'll be able to see what properties are going up for sale on our website as well.
How far in advance are The sales posted, I'm sorry to interrupt.
We usually receive tax sale cases at least 2 months in advance of the sale. So as soon as we get the information, it's entered, and then that information is then transferred onto the website.
All right, thank you so much for that. Sheriff Bilal, you mentioned that, and I know that you're happy to work with community groups. What's the best way for community gardens and residents to reach out to your office?
You have Miss Melissa Simpson at Phila.gov, who is the Director of Real Estate. You also have our Constituent Services group that will get us that information, but I believe directly go to Melissa Simpson, who is Director of Real Estate. So if they have information or situations that arise, she will get that information first and bring it down to either Tyreek or myself, and then we will have a conversation with who we need to talk to and try to resolve the issue. The quickest way is Melissa Simpson.
Thank you so much, Sheriff. Um, Madam Chair, that's the end of my questions.
Thank you, council member. I see that council member Dom has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Brooks, for bringing this to the forefront. I just have some basic questions. How many lots are we dealing with? Do we have any idea of the number of lots?
Madam Chair, I have the answer to that if you want me to, my history.
Please.
The batch that we started discussing about 13 years ago, there's about 5,000 properties. As I often mention, I have 1,358 in my district. When I first started, many of them have begun to get sold. So we're not sure what the portfolio is down because, as the sheriff has alluded, U.S. Bank Liens is being much more aggressive putting these out on sale. But I estimate that there's at least 3,000 that are still pending, and most, if not all of them, are lots. There have been very few houses.
Thank you, Councilmember Sanchez. Any idea how many of these we want to be community gardens?
So, part of our challenge has been, because outside of the Neighborhood Garden Trust, there's a lot of independent garden groups. There hasn't been a real, NGT tries to help in organizing and finding out. Many of these parcels are tied in with either, as you heard from the testimony of Mr. Moran, are tied into other properties. They're either PHA, many that were privately owned, and some that are city. So you see multiple lots together, and the assemblage is a little complicated because in the case of Iglesias, there's some PHA parcels, but there were some that were private, and of course, as mentioned, the land bank does not have the authority to acquire the U.S. bank liens because that was a city debt. It's a conversation that we've had on the record in the city council at least the last 13 years I've been here, and we need money if the city were to negotiate. Obviously, the U.S. bank lien is going to negotiate differently with the city of Philadelphia as it has done with individual folks because they're willing to take, and the sheriff's office can confirm this, they take a lot less money on the table when it's on sheriff's sale, but they're unwilling to negotiate in that way with the city of Philadelphia. So if we started negotiating, they will come in high and they will do what they always do, which is exploit and take advantage of communities.
I guess I'm trying to just understand, are we talking 100 lots, 500 lots, 1,000
No,
lots?
we're talking thousands.
For
There's still at least 3,000 of these in the city.
And how many for community gardens? Are you talking 3,000 for community gardens?
I would say there's at least 1,000 tied into some sort of neighborhood work, and again, how we validate that work around, it could be someone who just took care of a side lot, put a fence on it. It could be multiple lots, and then some of the more comprehensive gardens like Iglesias. But I would say at least 1,000 that are encumbered with someone that should have equity in it because they've taken care of it.
And any idea, council member, what the potential average value is of these lots?
When we've had conversations, the number initially started somewhere between 11 and 14 million. And now, especially in South Kensington, in the neighborhood described by Iglesias, south of Lehigh Avenue, it could be, $20-30 million.
For all of them?
Again, that's not what they're taking when they go to sheriff's sale, but that's how they would negotiate with someone who was legitimately trying to broker with them, as we've attempted to do over the years.
And so, ballpark average price per lot What do you think it's going to come out at?
I don't know if Tariq can speak to the last couple of U.S. bank liens, if you happen to know what they've gone. In South Kensington, the lots are going for as high as 100, 150,000 in some cases, depending. Some large, we have some large 16-foot lots, and then there's some other awkward ones. But it's quite the value in South Kensington is high.
Some of the
Councilmember,
lots they go. I'm sorry if you would like me
that's
to
okay.
answer that.
Yeah.
Some of the lots can go for low as $1,600, $1,700, and some of the lots go as high as $80,000, $90,000 and more, depending on what the location is. Obviously, depending on the size and depending on the development in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Councilmember Dodd, we also have some folks from US Bank that can speak to this directly if, for some of these questions that you're asking.
Okay. There's the folks from U.S. Bank are on the call today.
Yeah, I think they're in the next panel or two.
Or I'll wait to hear their testimony. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Ms. Waring, are you there and connected?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can. Good morning. Great
Good
to have
morning.
you here. Can you please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony?
Sure. Good morning, City Council Committee. Thank you for hearing my brief testimony. My name is Elizabeth Waring, and I am a 42-year resident of West Powellton. Also, I'm a charter member and manager of the Holly Street Neighbors Community Garden. That was the vision of Winnie Harris in 2005, who was a devout community leader, an activist about greening and preserving, a mother, grandmother, cherished neighbor, and friend who grew up on Holly Street. The trash-strewn lots have been revived, producing fresh vegetables, fruits, flowers for gardeners and the community. Also, there's a shade garden open to neighbors and passersby. It's equitable space on Holly Street. A year or so before Winnie was gunned down in February of 2017, she had sought the support of Councilwoman Janie Blackwell, starting the process to protect the garden, which is comprised of 4 parcels, 2 on Holly Street, 321 through 23, and 2 on North 41st Street, 320 through 322, to obtain acquisition into the Neighborhood Garden Trust. At Winnie's homegoing service, Councilwoman Janie Blackwell vowed that the garden would be dedicated as a living memorial, a green space to Winnie Harris, and to never be developed into housing. Well, this has not happened. But friends, neighbors, gardeners, PHS, UC Green, Tiny WPA, the Soil Generation Brigade, and other organizations and volunteers have worked diligently to maintain and preserve the garden. It's been 4 years, and the acquisition of the Holly Street Neighbors Community Garden is still in limbo, garnered by the U.S. bank liens. The garden has been vandalized once already by a developer and owner of one of the lots. One lot had been put in the land bank, then sold in 2019. So what I want to know is how can we move forward on this matter to secure the garden? And what's the Philadelphia Land Bank's role in it? And lastly, if it's about money, can it be paid from the city's general fund? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Waring, for your testimony, but also for all of your work to preserve Ms. Harris's legacy and to steward this wonderful community space.
Sure.
Ms. Betty Ferguson, are you there and connected?
Good morning, council members. Betty Ferguson is here.
Wonderful. Please proceed with your testimony.
As I stated, my name is Betty Ferguson. I've been a resident of the Belmont community, which sits between Mantua and Mill Creek, for over 50 years. I have been a champion for preserving the land over here, working with PHS to stabilize, to make sure that we have streetscapes, to make sure that we our children and the families had fresh fruit and vegetables. And what I stumbled across, and I'm gonna take you on a small journey. Uh, we work or have worked over in the 4100 block of Pensgrove Street. And the 4100 block of Pensgrove between, I want to say, 22 to 30. I mean, we've worked this land for over 10 years, keeping it clean, growing fruits and vegetables. And, I wish that at the time with Sheriff Bilal, I applaud what you're doing right now. I wish that we had the same courtesies that you're giving today. We've gone to council about preserving that particular lots of land. A lot of those lots there, I can give you true and correct addresses, were owned by the city. A couple of them were owned by Lineberger. It's like, ooh, we had gone to the sheriff's department and alerted them that we want to garden this area. Next thing we knew, they were sold after many, many years of being there, vacant, open space where the community uses this. Not only that area, it's adjoined to a 4100 block of Westminster Avenue. Years, I mean, over 25 years of being vacant, and we've been using this area as our outdoor social space because we have none. So now I'm looking at, okay, here's our blockage. You have Lineberger owning a few lots. Other lots were sold off to private developers. And what gets me with that, after a year, no development. After 2 years, they've done no development. So they're just buying these lots of private developers to place them in their portfolio. So it blocked us from even wanting to move forward because we have a renderings of indoor, to use the spaces for indoor facilities, as well as outdoor facilities, which would encompass garden, seating, and the whole gamut to complete our community. And that's just on the two blocks, like I stated, on Pensgrove Street, as well as Westminster Avenue. It's the same scenario, 412325 Westminster. We have Lawnberger, which I'm like, who in the heck are these people? Until I found out what they represent. And I'm going to wave you over to a new project since we couldn't gain any footage there. You guys passed in City Council for us to develop on 864 through 74 North Preston Street, as well as 871 and 873 North Bud, to become the the Belmont Cultural Activities Park. To find out there's 121 liens in this area. I'm being told by RDA, well, we don't see it. But our title company is saying, well, here's the liens. Here's a 76-page report. Liens. There's a dangling participle here that no one quite understands what is going on, who's responsible for cleaning up the liens, or do these liens exist at all? So I'm stumped. I'm really, really stumped. But we're finding within the Belmont community a lot of the parcels that a lot of the community neighbors want to develop themselves are caught in this web that we can't undo. And what gets me, and I want to slide back to Westminster Avenue, say for example, 4128 and 30, I believe it is, Westminster Avenue. It was only $4,000 in 2018, a $4,000 lien that Lineberger had on this property. And I'm the type of person, I'm the type of leader, I'm going to bring money to the table. I'm not going to come there with my hand out. I'm going to have people support because they believe in the cause. And my question is, how? How can this be resolved with Lineberger? Because if these liens are just that small, why wasn't the community allowed to bond together, sell dinners or what have you, to come up with this money to pay off this debt? Why do they still have a foothold on us? And I would like, well, I know, Chair Bilal, you cannot answer this because it was a past administration that lots were sold when we asked and told them and in letters, these lots were being utilized. They were being utilized as gardens. And they were taken from us. I'm going to calm down. I only had one cup of coffee. But I allow everyone allow me to testify. I think this was something that you guys needed to know and what I'm still battling with right now. And I need the help. I need clarity. Thank you for your time and your understanding.
Thank you so much, Miss Betty. And, to you and Miss Waring, I know this has been a slow going process, especially during the pandemic. I just, but I just want to let you know that our office is committed to continuing to advocate around preserving these spaces and honoring all of the hard work that you've put into stewarding this as a community asset. And I also know we have folks from US Bank and also Angel Rodriguez coming up who can speak to some of the specifics, hopefully, on these properties and on the larger issue. With that, are there any questions and comments for these witnesses from the committee or sponsor?
I do. I want to thank this panel for testifying, and I want to thank you for the work that you've done in your community. It lends to who we are as a people and trying to keep our community safe. But I have some questions about how we can best support you in the work that you're doing. And this is for all three of you. Like, what has been the biggest barrier for you to keep your community garden going and working? And, what kind of supports can we offer you to maintain these community gardens?
This is Elizabeth Waring. I've been asking for water supply in the garden because we are hooked up to a neighbor's backyard. And also for some electricity, we need some repairs of a green roof that's in there. I hope you can hear me. I'm losing my voice, so I can't talk too loud. The sidewalk needs to be repaired on the 41st Street side. I have a whole list. Do you want them now?
If you can send the list over to my office and we can kind of look through it for you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Miss Betty or Mr. Moran?
Mr. Murat, you can speak
Hi.
first.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for the time. So at the garden, there's a lot of hands-on and kind of do-it-ourselves approach. We've been able to secure water and other things that the garden needs. Currently, we're building a patio to make it easier for handicapped patrons to come by and visit the garden. Um, all that to say that maintaining a garden and having the space for the community is an ongoing process. Um, and there are things that we do need, and we can send a list to, I guess we'll make it a public list. But electricity is an essential need for us right now. We haven't been able to secure, I don't know, permits or but anyways, we many of us understand that all of that is a process as well. All that to say that things of that nature will really help us. But obviously, securing the land that we're gardening on, right? And having this panel and this discussion is just absolutely a great thing. But again, securing the land is would really mean something here. Um, so in all of that, uh, finding ways to secure the land. Some of the land that our particular garden is sitting on private developers, and we've made contact with some of them in our work, and some of them have put a price tag that can be daunting at times. Um, all that to say that we know that there is support for or funding for this type of work as well, and having access to that is also an essential thing for us at the garden.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Council member, I had to stop and think about this a little bit, but once upon a time we used to, receive the sheriff's sale list. So, the powers to be would have heads up of what's coming down the pike. That would be fruitful. So, my organization, the Belmont Lions Civic Association, CDC, could pre-warn folk about their lots if they're working these lots. I understand there's a website. I mean, I have a whole bunch on my plate, but we used to, like I stated, gain a list. And the other portion right now is the liens that are prevalent over the lot, the Belmont Commons lot, proposed lot. Uh, we need for that to go away. If that can go away, we can proceed on and build something very, very beautiful. And we have some other lots within the Belmont community that Lineberger has their foothold on, where people would just want little top lots. And it wouldn't take much for us to gather donation to render that for them. And basically, this is what I need help with at this juncture. We have even what I spoke about on Pensgrove Street. You have Lineberger on a part of that that's blocking us. And so now, if we want to do anything different, we have to buy back those lots from the private developers. My other request is that it should be some ordinance that if they're buying these lots and they're not building on them, they should resort back to the city after a certain amount of time. Why are they just sitting on them doing nothing? It's not bringing any beautification to our or revitalization to our community. They're just still sitting there. And it would be a risk if people are on these lots and if someone gets hurt, they're not going to pay. They're not going to want. They're not going to want to be liable for that, and that concerns me as well.
Thank you so much, Miss Betty, for that. That ends my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Sherrills, can you call the next panel or witness to testify?
Madam Chair, I would
Yeah.
like to leave the email address for Miss Betty, for our director, real estate director. She will email her the list. So I just wanted to if I could, just say melissa.simpson@phila.gov we will absolutely email her the list prior to the sheriff's.
I'm sorry, you sort of broke up. I didn't hear. This is Betty Ferguson. I didn't fully hear what you said.
Yes, if you email us, I'm going to give you melissa.simpson@phila.gov. That is the real estate director. If you email her your email address, she will give you the list prior to them coming out. So you'll have that list to take a look at it. If one of those properties show up there, you'll be able to act upon it as quickly as possible.
And I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Thank you. Can you CC us, the office?
Absolutely.
All right,
We'll
or Kim
definitely send it
Melissa,
to you
rather.
guys. All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Before we close out, Madam Chair, Councilwoman,
Yes,
we need to have a conversation because I just heard something in here that we probably need to discuss.
yes.
So when you get an opportunity, let's Kendra, yourself, and I think Sanchez and Dom, that we can discuss on this, the people in your committee. I've heard that we
Absolutely.
probably need to sit down and talk about.
Yep. We can absolutely set up a conversation with the committee, and thank you. Thanks for your energy around this and your willingness to work together.
I
Um,
I gotta go to my
okay,
next.
bye, Sheriff. Have a
Thank you
good
so
day.
much. Have a good day. Look out for our spooky bus around the city. See you.
All right now.
Uh,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Ms. Charles, can you call the next panel or witness to testify?
Panel 3, Angel Rodriguez, Philadelphia Land Bank, and Mark Harris, Esquire, Larnberger, Goggin, Blair, and Sampson.
Okay, Mr. Rodriguez, are you there and connected?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Angel Rodriguez, Executive Director of the Philadelphia Land Bank. Good morning, Chairperson Gautier, members of the Committee on Housing and Neighborhood Development and Homelessness and the Homeless. I'm, again, Angel Rodriguez, the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Land Bank. I'm here to testify on resolution number 210838. The Land Bank and the administration recognize and acknowledge the impact of the U.S. bank liens on the city's ability to put vacant land back into productive use. We also recognize the impact U.S. bank liens have on community gardens and open spaces, which has proven to be, we all know, are community assets. The U.S. bank lien situation is a complicated situation. But the Land Bank and the administration are committed to work with City Council on this complicated issue and also to better our ability to service community gardeners. To that end, we're working currently to update our website, working on license renewals to make that more streamlined, also in terms of a structure for long-term leases for community gardens moving forward. And we're really looking at a way we can effectively do land swaps as well. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in this matter, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Also, I just want to mention that we have Francis Beckley from the Department of Revenue and Ash Richards, Director of Urban Agriculture from Parks and Rec, who are also here available for questioning.
Okay, Mr. Harris, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Mark Harris. I am the current managing partner of Linebarger, Goggin, Blair, and Sampson's Philadelphia office. And I am here this morning at the invitation of council to testify on resolution 210838. And I'd like to address the council, first of all, by saying thank you for the opportunity to be before you today. I actually think that it was pretty necessary for me to appear before you, even though I've been to a lot of your events, but we are happy to have the opportunity to speak with you today. It's been very helpful for me to hear the stories from the panel of the community gardeners that we've heard this morning, but we also realize that as a law firm who's hired by the city and by U.S. Bank, we walk a thin line between acting within the confines of the law and balancing the needs of clients as well as the community. Since this issue has come up with the U.S. bank liens, we have continued to work with city council members and the revenue department to the extent that we are able to do so. A lot of the ways that we have worked with the city and the city council is that we work consistently to identify these properties that are somewhat identified as community gardens. And my office has typically pulled these properties that are slated for sale for that very reason, because we do realize that there is a pressing issue with the city on the precipice of losing a lot of these properties to developers who want to come in and sort of bulldoze the community. So I am here for any questions as well, and thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions before we open up to the committee and the sponsor. So first for Mr. Rodriguez, can you talk about the status of negotiations with U.S. Bank regarding buying the liens in bulk?
I think that would be best handled by my colleague, Francis Beckley, from the Revenue Department.
Sure. Mr. Beckley, please state your name for the record before you answer.
Good morning. This is Francis Beckley. That's fine. The last time we were approached by U.S. Bank, it was in the fall of 19 and the spring of 20. The last offer, and at that point there was no appetite from them. They were represented by a New York financing firm, and there was no appetite on their part for any kind of partial sale. They only wanted to sell us the whole bit. And the most recent offer that I can recollect was for, and I couldn't find it in writing, but it was roughly around 10 or 12 million. And that was given to us, I think it was April of 20. And I was sitting here in this office in MSB, surrounded by the completely deserted city, because of course we were closed down for the pandemic. A shout out to all the frontline revenue people who were here making things work during that. And I just said to them, that's just, and at that point we didn't know what kind of federal money we were having. And I said, the city just does not have that kind of money. And negotiations fell apart at that point. And we haven't heard back from them. Now, more recently, they may entertain an offer if we were to try and prioritize a portion of the portfolio.
And when you talk about the idea of a partial offer, what did that look like? What did the city want?
At that point, we have been approached on a number of occasions, and at that point, I believe we had a list of 300 or 400 properties that Jenny Greenberg had given us that the Horticultural Society had an interest in funding. And there was no, as I said, at that point, the people in New York who were not U.S. Bank, they were somebody hired by U.S. Bank to sort of try and broker the deal, and were frankly not very knowledgeable even about the financial instruments, let alone Philadelphia. Just really had no interest.
Okay. Do you have a sense of, if we were to be able to negotiate with them for those 300 to 400 properties, do you have a sense of the price tag for that?
I honestly do not. Let's remember that we're not talking about buying the property. All you're talking about is buying the lien or legal claim against the property. Now, once you've gotten rid of that, then in virtually every single one of these instances, you will have 20 years of delinquent city taxes, because nobody's been paying the taxes on these parcels. That is the next claim. And both of those claims are what are called super priority liens. So no other judgment creditor or person will be above that. The only thing that comes above that is our some state taxes, which would not be, they're corporate taxes, and they would not be relevant in these situations.
Do you have a sense of the total amount of the city liens on those properties?
I do not. However, because of the MOU that the city has with the land bank, the Land bank would be able to purchase those properties for the lesser of the city liens or the assessed value of the property. So if the liens are more than the current assessed value of the property, the land bank would only need to bid the assessed value of the property.
Okay. If the city,
And the nice thing, one thing I should mention about that not everybody understands about sheriff sales is when Ms. Ferguson was complaining about the liens on the various liens on those properties, if something goes through sheriff sale, all liens are wiped clean. The purchaser gets the property free and clear. So, you know, to the extent that there might be old judgments or other issues, having it bid at sheriff sale is a good way to get a fresh start for the piece of property.
okay, I want to make sure that I understand. If the city were to clear the U.S. bank liens on these 300 to 400 properties, what processes could be put into place to ensure that the properties are returned to secured for community use?
That would be a question for Angel.
Okay, Angel.
So hi, can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So once the resolution of the U.S. bank liens happens, so those liens would be removed, and then you would have the existing municipal liens. The land bank would then identify them and place them in, and technically what we call this is, or anecdotally, on hold, identify them for sheriff sale. Then that means the land bank has identified them to use our priority bid. So once we put them on hold and identify them for acquisition, as they come up for sheriff sale, we would go to the sheriff sale and we would utilize our priority bid. And just so everybody's aware, once we utilize our priority bid, there is no second offer. We're the only agency that can purchase them. So at that point, then we would take title to the property once we've paid off the liens.
Okay. Thank you. And I think my next question, I think, is for Mr. Harris. Are
Yes.
you able to expound on whether U.S. Bank would entertain, a partial sale of these liens?
I can say that they probably would. I was hoping that my client was going to be available for this call, but he mentioned to me earlier in the week that, because I was trying to schedule a call with him myself, and so we have a meeting scheduled for next week. My hunch is that they would be willing to entertain negotiations at this point. How much that would be or what monetary value that would involve, I can't speak to. And I would rather they be present to engage in a conversation as such to discuss as far as amounts are concerned. But I think that they would probably be amenable to discussing a sale of the liens, given the current environment coming out from COVID and everything.
Okay. What meeting? Sorry, you said you had a meeting next week. What meeting are you referring to?
A meeting with U.S. Bank.
With you and U.S. Bank.
Yes.
Okay.
I anticipate discussing this with him at that meeting.
How can we make this a conversation that also kind of includes and re-engages the city?
I think it pretty much just depends on Francis and U.S. Bank. I can facilitate a meeting between the two. I don't think that they would be against meeting with the city.
Okay, so you'll report that to whom? You'll talk to them about that and coordinate with whom?
Coordinate with whom?
Who will you coordinate with at the city?
Francis.
Okay, all right, great. Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions. I want to thank Mr. Harris for taking time meeting with me earlier in the week too, and around this at the last minute. I do appreciate your willingness to have this conversation and working towards getting your client involved and engaged in this conversation. So this question I have is for either administration or Mr. Harris. I think it came up before. How many properties in Philadelphia are currently encumbered by U.S. bank liens?
I think at last count, I show somewhere around 2,300 clean accounts in our portfolio that are encumbered by U.S. bank liens.
Okay. And Mr. Rodriguez, do you have a sense of how many of those currently are maintained by community gardens or open lots?
When we were going through this initial negotiation, we had come up with a list of about 600 properties. So there were those that had been identified by PHF, but we had sent out people to do inspections and also inquiries that bumped it up to about 600. It might be larger now.
Okay. Also, Mr. Rodriguez, what options or pathways currently exist for a community organization to acquire property with the U.S. bank lien that does not risk its loss at share sale? Like, what's the process?
So for us, the acquisition policy that governs how the land bank operates doesn't allow us to bid or utilize our priority bid at U.S. bank lien. So what it states is that if a third party pays off the U.S. bank lien, then we can go in and resolve the remaining municipal liens. So if a garden group, they would have to have resources to pay off the U.S. bank lien first, and then the remaining municipal lien, we can say, all right, we'll pay that balance off. But currently, the policy doesn't allow us to do that. We would have to change the policy.
So just for clarity, the city would need to negotiate a price for that particular parcel or parcels in order for an agreement to be made with the community group in order to acquire the land. I think I said that all.
So as Francis was mapping out before, there's the issue of the U.S. bank lien, which is in first position. And then since 97, there have been municipal liens that have been racking up on the property. So if there was a negotiation and the U.S. bank liens were settled, there would still be the underlying lien that would have to be resolved. That's where the land bank could come in and say, okay, we need, we're going to identify these properties are actively gardened. We'd like to acquire them. And then we would utilize our priority bid. And based on the agreement we have with the city and the school district, we would pay the lesser of the OPA value or the existing lien. And then we would acquire title. So remember that this is where it gets a little complicated. U.S. bank lien is not the property. It's the lien on the property. What we want is the land. So we have to resolve the lien first and then allow for the land bank to actually step in and then take the property.
Okay, so what would need to happen to change this land bank policy that you just mentioned? Like, there's also a barrier. Like, what would we need to do to change that?
We would have to engage, I would assume we would follow the same process we did for the disposition policy. That would require a lot of coordination between multiple agencies, but also public hearings. Draft something. The acquisition policy was approved under a city council resolution, unlike the disposition policy, which is an ordinance. So we could amend it, go through a process that way, draft it, present it to council as a resolution, and council would have to approve that.
Is that something you're willing to do in making this change?
There are a lot of things that need to be amended in the acquisition policy, and there are a lot of issues that have come up that we recognize are issues that we need to resolve in terms of the acquisition policy and how it lines up with the disposition policy, and how the land bank can operate smoothly. So we can, I think, typically what you'll hear. Frustration is you have people occupying the land and wanting it, taken in, and that was the purpose of the land bank, was to assist in removing blight and having that ownership transfer into responsible caretakers. The problem is we have certain things that aren't very clear in the acquisition policy, and acquisition doesn't mean you're going to get the property afterwards because you have to be qualified. So there's a lot of work we could be doing, and yes, we'd love to engage in a process with the council to work.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're creating a path to kind of work quickly on these because some of
Councilwoman
our
Brooks,
communities. Yes.
and I'm sorry for interrupting you. If I could add something to what Angel was just said earlier when Betty Ferguson was talking, we get approached all the time by taxpayers who want to pay the lien, but title does not pass. So we steer people from doing that because, you know, someone could easily take their money and pay the lien, but it doesn't mean that they now own the lot. And so we steer taxpayers away from doing it for that reason.
Just to piggyback on what Mr. Harris is saying, in essence, you're paying off the lien, but the property owner gets the benefit. So the person who's on the title, you just paid their.
Okay. So yeah, thanks for explaining all this out. I know there's a sense of urgency because these community gardens are like disappearing at a rapid rate. And it sounds like we want to make sure um, we're clear on how to get these properties in the hand of community members. And I'm looking forward to working with you guys on this. And thank you for sharing this information. I do have a few more questions. Mr. Harris,
Yes.
you heard earlier testimony that one of the barriers faced by community gardens um, working to pay off U.S. bank liens is the high costs. And it often compounds penalties and liens. Is there a possibility that those penalties and fees could be waived for community gardens?
I don't have the authority to waive those. And I would like to say, because I have the list for the November sale that I will provide to you. Typically, the amounts for the delinquent taxes are not very large amounts. Even when we're dealing with a lot of the years, the P&I does tend to rack up from the base amount. But I myself, we do not have the authority to waive the P&I.
But this is a conversation we can have directly with your client when in conversation. Well, not we, but I think it would be Francis' responsibility to do that. Not to
Yes.
pass more Walker off, but just for clarity, that is something that would be
Right.
in play in that conversation.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Now we can ask, but I can't make any guarantees as well, respect to what they would say.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. The next question is for the administration. We've heard a lot about how hard it is for community gardeners to find out how to become owners of the land that they have cared for. Is there anything that the administration can do to make this process simpler for residents who have been caring for these otherwise neglected spaces for years without being paid for that labor? Like, is there anything we can do to help them?
Can we clarify the question? There's the issue of privately held land versus publicly held land. So if a community, and this goes back to the comments that Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez made, a lot of these gardens are made up of privately held land and publicly held land. So if it's publicly held land, we have a process, we have a website and application process to convey that out. Again, these are one of the issues where we need to look at the disposition and acquisition policy to make sure that we're actually achieving our goal. Privately held land, if we identify it, and this is actually in the acquisition policy, if it's identified that it's privately held and it doesn't have a U.S. bank lien, the land bank can place a hold on that property and identify it for acquisition. This does come to funding. I just want to point out to council that, this past fiscal year, the land bank did not receive any funding for acquisition. But, unfortunately, saying that the share sales were suspended as well. So we didn't really have a loss of property during that last fiscal year. But the land bank would then have to identify that property, put a hold on it, and then at the next available sheriff sale, when it came up, we would acquire it, and then we could dispose of it to the community garden.
So you mentioned funding. What amount of funding would be needed to start making, to begin this process of acquisition that we just mentioned?
I don't know the total. If you're talking about U.S. bank liens, that number I don't know.
I'm talking about even a private. You mentioned that some of the land are encumbered
Every
by
year we get
multiple.
about, we budget for, $3.5 million. That gets us about 350 properties a year. Can always go higher, but again, cities, it's a process with the budget process.
Okay. Okay, we'll continue this conversation, but thank you for sharing this with me. And one more question is around, you mentioned in your testimony that you are taking several steps at the land bank to address this crisis. Can you please review those steps you're taking and provide like dates of completion?
So the things we're working on are how to streamline and address the concerns that have been raised to us through FPAC and the work that Ash Richards is doing in urban ag piece is to how are we much more user friendly. So we're working on currently on updating our website. I'm working with my legal team and our insurance company to work on license agreements and also lease agreements to make that process readily available and easier for gardeners. Also trying to streamline and put up standard operating procedures for long-term leases, community groups. So and as a footnote, anything over a year has to come before either the land bank board or the PRA board, and then also requires a council resolution for a long-term lease over a year. So we're working on how to streamline those issues. I am currently, last week we had initiated our conversation with our insurance company. I've received feedback this week. Have to have a follow-up. I think I could give you something more definitive, probably if we touch base in the middle of November, because we are actively working towards it. I think once we get the process going and a point of contact, I know that was also another issue. So you'll be seeing changes to our website in the next couple of weeks. And also we'll have a way for people to contact us so that just on garden issues.
Thank you so much. We'll be following up just to check in on that. Thank you so much for your time. Madam Chair, that resumes my questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Dom.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to this panel. I have a few questions maybe for Francis, or I'm not sure, maybe Mark. Did you say that in 19, the valuation or the proposal from U.S. Bank was $12 million for the whole portfolio?
That's my rough recollection. And I checked with, I couldn't find anything in writing, but I checked with Jackie Dunn, who was working with me on that at the time, and that's what we both remember it being somewhere around 10 or 12.
Okay, and was that for about 2,300 parcels at the time?
I suspect it was a bit more because there have been sales since then.
Okay, so today would you say it's about 2,000 parcels we still have?
It's roughly 2,300. Yeah,
It's 2,300
yeah.
Today. So what was it in 19? 3,000?
I'd
have to look back at the reports from 19. I don't have those numbers in front of me right now.
Mark, do you have a total on the lien, the face value of the liens today?
No, but I can get that information rather quickly.
Okay.
Let's see. Wait a minute. I think I do. Roughly 23 million, I want to say.
Does that include what's owed, U.S. Bank and the city's liens, everything?
That's not the city.
No.
That's just U.S. Bank.
Just U.S. Bank. So they were settling the 23 for 12 at the time.
That was roughly what they were talking about.
And how much is the city's portion of those total liens?
The city, that doesn't include any of the cities. The city has 20 years of tax liens on virtually every one of those parcels afterwards.
What is that, though, in dollars total?
I honestly don't know. But what I do know is that regardless of what the face amount of those liens is, again, the land bank is entitled to take them for the assessed value of the property.
Right. And then the other question is, do we have an idea of the OPA value for the remaining U.S. bank liens?
No, not right offhand. I would need to get that information and assign it to someone to gather that information for you. But we could work on that.
So that OPA value is going to be what it's going to cost the land bank after the U.S. bank liens are satisfied.
And so I'm just throwing out an idea for what it's worth. Is it worth it for us to revisit this whole portfolio? Is it worth it for us to look at the values of these properties today and then do our own, evaluation and underwriting and then determine maybe it does make sense for us to buy the liens back and work it through the land bank and maybe take of the 2,300, I don't know what the number would be, 500 or whatever the number is, 1,000, make gardens and maybe try to market the rest to repay back the cost of the 12 million.
That's an angel question, not a legal question.
I think we'd have to look at the portfolio in its totality. I mean, it's a budget question. I also think that these U.S. bank lien properties span the whole city.
Right.
So in terms of the final use, I think we can readily identify gardens. There are U.S. bank lien properties that do not have gardens on them. So what the proposed use afterwards, but again, the title is the land bank. We would be banking those properties for future disposition, depending on what the ultimate use would be. But the activity of identifying them and what the cost is and what the price would be, we can do that.
Point of information. I see your idea, but I just wanted to point out that a lot of these properties also exist in gentrifying neighborhoods. And so the idea of marketing the rest is complicated because they're a prime means of us being able to provide affordable housing. So from my perspective, it's not a matter of just selling the properties to the highest bidder and taking in revenue. It's also a matter of looking at this land, like in the 3rd district. This could be one of the only ways we're providing affordable housing. So it's about saving the gardens, but it's also about the responsible disposition of the remaining land as well.
Well, maybe you look at the whole portfolio and you say 500 or 1,000 are gardens and 1,000 or 500 are affordable, and look at the balance and say these we can sell and make up this value. I'm just throwing out that concept that maybe there's a way for us to accomplish this goal.
So, Councilman Dom, if I could jump in here, one of the how the land bank operates is we work in partnership with council members with council districts. So whatever the land strategy is, we work hand in hand as to what that priority is. So again, if it's affordable housing, that's what we're going to target and like push out. So we rarely put out competitive sales where it's just market rate development. Almost, I would say 90% of our dispositions have some level of affordability or qualify for the exception to a competitive sale. So it's either going to be garden, open space, or 100% affordable, or it's going to be some mix where it's 51% affordable. And all of those decisions are made hand in hand with the council member of that district and what the land strategy is for that area. Because I think there is truth to the statement that Philadelphia is a city of neighborhoods. Not everything works everywhere.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Councilman Dom, I'd like to
Sorry.
at my
Madam
office.
Chair?
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Chair Jones or Vice Chair Jones, go ahead.
So, first of all, to the author of this resolution, again, thank you. This discussion is valuable and timely as we battle gentrification versus other land uses, affordable housing, gardening. Perfect time. So if I recall, under the Rendell administration, we were type 4 revenue. Was it 18 million we received through that sale of stranded properties? What was it 18 million? Anyone?
Anybody familiar with that? Our resident expert, Councilmember Kenyon Sanchez, had to step off. So I'm not sure if there's anyone else who can answer that.
So let's go with at that point in time, some years ago, that total sum of real estate was not as valuable as it is today. I think that's a safe assessment. There is a mathematic equilibrium point where we can win, win, and win, where we can buy back the liens, take a look at the areas where we are trying to provide land, valuable land, for affordable housing, and then still sell off some of the more desired parcels that might not be able to adapt to affordable housing. And there is such a thing. But somebody or a group of somebodies has to drill down on the math and say, this makes sense, this does not. But we are at least 20 years away past the sale or the sale to Lineberg for those liens. Guarantee you that between now and the time we finally do a study, our properties will be even more valuable. So I think not that we were speculators as a city or as a government, but the speculation and increase in value right now is to our advantage. And I'm not as wise as Sanchez on the matter or Councilmember Dom, but you know, for a poor boy that went to public school, I think that's kind of true.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Harris, did you want to respond?
No, I was going to follow up with Councilman Dom about some of the portfolio that we have pulled from sale because we've either gotten a call from councilman's office or worked with Land Bank. I think we have approximately almost 170 of those accounts that we've pulled over the last couple of years that are pretty much just in abeyance until a solution is arrived at.
Councilmember Dom, do you want to continue, or were you done?
I'm good. I just wanted to mention that if that's the case, Mark, I want to make sure what you're saying is that when Francis Beckley said 2,300 properties back in 2,300 is today, or was 2,300 back in 19 the portfolio
No, it's 23 as of today.
as of today? So if I'm doing the math, if it was 12 million, are we talking about roughly $5,800 per lot, just doing an average price?
I can't speak to that actually. I'd have to look at the portfolio because each parcel varies with respect to.
No, I was saying just an average. If we took 2,000 into 12 million, isn't it like 6,000? I mean, I just think there's an opportunity here, as Councilmember Jones said, we all can win. You should look at that. Because I think the values on some of these lots that we're not going to use for gardens or affordable housing might help us offset this expense, that's all.
Right.
And there's another factor here that we should calculate into that analysis. By putting some of these properties back into the market, we're going to collect real estate taxes, and we're going to improve neighborhoods. And that's all beneficial to the core of the city. So thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Sherrills, will you call the next panel or witness to testify?
Panel 4, Ebony Griffin, Public Interest Law Center of Philadelphia, Jenny Greenberg, Neighborhood Gardens Trust, Justin Treza, Philadelphia Horticultural Society, Rick Sauer, PACDC, Andrea Bibiloni, Philadelphia Legal Assistance.
Ms. Griffin, are you there and connected? I see you.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ebony Griffin, and I will be testifying before you today about what we've seen with U.S. bank liens in my practice at the Public Interest Law Center. Dear Council and Committee, good afternoon or morning, Chairwoman Gautier and members of the Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and Homelessness. My name is Ebony Griffin, and I am testifying in my capacity as an environmental justice attorney at the Public Interest Law Center. Thank you for allowing me to testify today about this issue, which very deeply affects my practice and the preservation of green space in communities of color and low-income neighborhoods in Philadelphia. The Law Center commends you for convening this hearing to ensure the city's sheriff sales are held in an equitable way, prioritizing the needs of low-income communities of color. In our environmental work, the Law Center uses a variety of methods to ensure that Philadelphia's most vulnerable residents have access to a healthy, natural, and built environment, but also that they have a seat at the table and a voice in what happens in their neighborhoods. The Law Center's Garden Justice Legal Initiative accomplishes this by providing pro bono legal representation to urban farmers and community gardens in Philadelphia in efforts to protect and preserve the city's green space, which is being lost due to development pressure. This development pressure, in part, stems from the 1997 securitization of tax liens. In 1997, tax lien securitization and remaining privately held liens contributed to gentrification, displacement, urban blight, and a reduction in green space. Allowing sheriff sales to proceed without removing the obstacles caused by these privately held tax liens and creating a clear pathway to ownership for gardens already occupying these spaces will further contribute to these problems. This testimony explains how and provides potential solutions to that problem. So for a little bit of background, back in 97, the city bundled together 30,000 tax liens and sold them to U.S. Bank. And that's a bit of a simplification of what actually happened, but for all intents and purposes, that works for now. The city lost money in this effort when investors were unable to collect on many of the securitized liens. The Philadelphia Department of Revenue, in a November 2013 report, described the results of the 1997 sale as the worst-case scenario for tax lien securitization. We've heard from neighborhood redevelopers across the city that properties whose liens were sold remained in limbo for years, unavailable for redevelopment because tax balances continued to be uncollectible. Public agencies could not acquire the property without first paying the lien holder the value of the lien, plus their fees, which stymied efforts to get vacant tax delinquent properties back into productive reuse, which is exactly what's happening now. In fact, then Chief of Staff to Mayor Rendell, David Cohen, acknowledged the city's miscalculation regarding the uncollectible accounts in a quote that appeared in a 2001 Philadelphia Inquirer editorial. Quote, "The rating agencies missed it, the underwriters missed it, the insured missed it, and the city missed it." End quote. The problem. So the consequences of the fallout from the 1997 securitization are still very evident today. While the exact number is unclear, data from the city estimates that between 3,600 and 5,500 properties in Philadelphia are encumbered by these bank liens. The liens on these properties are between 18 and 21 million, with a total debt to the city of approximately $41 million. I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulty. Give me 1 second. Oh no. Okay. Here we go. So approximately half the potential clients who reach out to us for help in preserving a garden manage lots burdened by a private tax lien. The problems associated with a private bank lien on a garden parcel manifest in a number of ways. The Law Center regularly receives requests for help from gardeners threatened with losing parcels to sheriff sale. Under normal circumstances, removing a parcel from the sheriff sale list necessitates a phone call to the appropriate councilperson's office and a subsequent conversation with the Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation about the acquisition of the parcel and eventual disposition to the gardener. However, more often than not, we learn that the parcels were part of the large-scale securitization of 97. And in these instances, even with council support, very little can be done, as we've discussed at length today. Very little can be done to save the garden, as growers are often unable to pay the lien and the exorbitant fees that accompany it. This usually leads to a developer purchasing the property and replacing the garden with luxury housing units out of the reach of the existing community. This dynamic ultimately contributes to a sharp increase in property taxes and displacement of long-term lower-income residents. One such garden in Council District 7 was lost to a developer because of a U.S. bank lien. An elderly resident who used the produce from the garden to feed himself had been caring for the garden for many, many years. He had previously reached out to the city inquiring about a title transfer. However, the presence of the U.S. bank lien made this impossible. Eventually, a developer purchased the garden at sheriff sale and plans to replace it with luxury condominium. These private bank liens make it difficult for low-income gardeners to use the law as a means to preserve their gardens. Because of the increase in gardens being lost to sheriff sale, the law center developed a training program to teach other attorneys throughout the city how to represent these gardens. And since April 2018, we have trained hundreds of attorneys interested in assisting with this mission. However, unless the potential client is immediately able to pay the tax lien along with the usually exorbitant interest and fees, the client is left with very few options to acquire the parcel. Further, because the lien holder's main incentive is monetary return on their initial 1997 investment, they are usually reluctant to agree to even a short postponement of the sale to allow our clients the opportunity to raise the money to purchase the properties themselves. Just a few months ago, this scenario played out almost verbatim for a gardener in District 3. This gardener, another elderly woman who had been maintaining the parcel next to her home for over 30 years, reached out to us frantically after seeing a sheriff's sale notice posted on her fence. Our first step was to seek to postpone the pending sale while we found an attorney to assist the client with filing an action to acquire title. We learned quickly that the presence of the privately held bank lien on the property prevented the city from postponing the sale. Additionally, with a significantly reduced operating budget and blanket ban on acquiring these types of parcels, PHDC was unable to help. The garden ultimately sold on April 9th, and we are still searching for ways to return the client's beloved 30-year-old garden back to her and prevent the developer from turning it into market rate housing. The presence of U.S. bank liens significantly impairs the ability of PHDC to put vacant land back into productive reuse. As such, long abandoned parcels remain overgrown, littered with trash, drug paraphernalia, and other debris. Abandoned tax delinquent properties create a vicious cycle of blight in urban areas throughout the Commonwealth. With approximately 33,000 vacant lots, the problem is particularly acute in Philadelphia, and the majority of this vacant land is clustered in council districts 3, 5, and 7. These districts also have the highest poverty rates in the city on average. Over 300,000 Philadelphians live on blocks with one or more abandoned houses or parcels. And this large inventory of vacant land not only decreases the value of neighboring properties, but burdens residents and local governments as vacant properties create significant health and safety issues. So finally, suggested solutions. So to mitigate the inevitable and continued gentrification, displacement, and loss of green space facilitated by the presence of U.S. bank liens, the city must develop a short-term and a long-term strategy. As a very first step of the short-term strategy, the city must create a clear pathway to ownership for community members using these parcels. And I have to reiterate that this is crucial because without ensuring that gardens and community spaces will receive title, any action the city takes to pay off or remove the liens will result in a lower barrier of entry for developers. So we must ensure that the people using these spaces have priority status for any title transfer. So additionally, we encourage the city to pass legislation authorizing PHDC to acquire parcels with U.S. bank liens, re-empowering them to work towards putting vacant, blighted parcels back into productive reuse. However, for PHDC to be a viable preservation option, the city must fully fund and staff the agency. There are far more community spaces in need of preservation than PHDC can handle with its current budget and staff. And finally, for gardens able to pay a portion of the U.S. bank liens, the city must negotiate an easily navigable, accessible system that eliminates penalties and allows individuals to enter into payment arrangements for the principal price. And for the long-term strategy, the city must allocate the funds to pay off the U.S. bank liens in their entirety. So the estimated total cost to the city to pay off the bank liens is around $28 million. However, the city could likely negotiate a significant reduction in penalties with the lien holder. And while the exact amount of U.S. bank liens on garden parcels is not yet available, whatever that amount would be significantly less. And so finally, the city must commit to developing an equitable property tax collection system that does not include securitizing land containing community green space or real property that threatens Philadelphia's most vulnerable residents. The Law Center looks forward to continuing the conversation around eliminating these private tax liens on the city's vacant land. We are happy to engage and work through solutions. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Griffin, for your testimony, but also for the vital service you're providing to our communities. Ms. Greenberg, Are you there and connected?
I am.
Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. And good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jenny Greenberg, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Neighborhood Gardens Trust. Good morning, Chairwoman Gauthier and members of the Housing, Neighborhood Development and Homelessness Committee. Thank you so much for holding this hearing and for the opportunity to speak. I've been working with NGT for about 7 years, and NGT has been working since 1986 to acquire and protect community managed open spaces across Philadelphia. NGT holds title or long-term leases for almost 50 community gardens to date, and we're working hard to help meet the urgent need that exists to secure and protect many more of these shared open spaces that are threatened by real estate development and speculation. Most of Philadelphia's 400 plus community gardens were cultivated on formerly abandoned land in neighborhoods that were disinvested through redlining. Through their cooperative efforts, residents across the city have been maintaining green spaces for decades as places of nourishment, healing, and community building. They provide space for residents to grow healthy food and to safely gather and play. They provide refuge from high heat summer temperatures and mitigate air and water pollution. And these well-maintained green spaces have been shown to help reduce street violence and help people feel safer. NGT works with community groups, gardeners, and the city to acquire and preserve gardens with insecure land tenure. In the past 3 years, we've been able to acquire 32 parcels of land at 11 gardens through nominal sale dispositions, and have worked closely with the land bank to acquire several privately owned tax delinquent parcels. Multiple gardens, however, have parcels with U.S. bank liens, which are the biggest threat and deterrent to our work. These liens put gardens at serious risk of being sold through sheriff's sale, and they prevent the land bank from being able to acquire high priority parcels. When community members approach us for help and we see that their garden has a U.S. bank lien, the acquisition process essentially hits a brick wall. For NGT and so many community organizations, there is no pathway to securing these parcels for the community. If the property goes to sheriff's sale, we risk losing it to the highest bidder. If we pay off a lien to prevent the threat of sheriff's sale, we still have no ownership claim. And we have no assurance that the land bank will be able to move forward to acquire it because of its limited financial capacity. There's no approach right now for community groups that have been maintaining green spaces for decades and are committed to continuing to do so. In 2018, NGT tried to take matters into our own hands. We hunted down a contact at U.S. Bank's Community Reinvestment Office in St. Louis and asked them to assign 10 priority liens to us to further our preservation efforts. The proposal was that we do so as a charitable donation. The request was forwarded to Linebarger, which, after acknowledging it and telling us they'd be back in touch, never followed up. And those parcels have either been lost or still at risk today. I want to share a letter from a garden leader in West Philadelphia. He couldn't be here to testify today because he's in the hospital, but from the hospital he wrote this letter. Good morning, distinguished councilmen and councilwomen. My name is Victor Young. I represent a nonprofit called Community Health and Gardens. I would like to give a special thanks to Councilman Jones for assisting us in this project of growing organic vegetables for the neighborhood in which we live. We members of Five Loaves Two Fish Garden have provided many families a healthy food source and a safe atmosphere to commune with each other. It's been a long road to reach this place, and NGT's cooperation with the Philadelphia Land Bank has been very helpful, allowing us to obtain most of the properties on which we garden. Our struggle has been with the U.S. bank lien on one parcel. It has been a very difficult task to remedy. I've asked Ms. Greenberg to present this letter and implore you to assist us and protect this shining gem that we found underneath the rubble and debris that once existed on this parcel of land. I hope and pray that so-called progress doesn't stifle the common man as he attempted to make better for his family and community. The lot Victor is talking about has more than $16,000 due to Linebarger for a single lien, with all the fees and interest and penalties. And I dread the day that we learn it's been sold online to a speculator who has no idea the value it has to the community. Until the city makes solving this issue a priority, precious green spaces will continue to be lost, often at a cost to the most vulnerable residents. This past year, NGT was able to secure a state grant for $92,000 to buy back a single parcel in the middle of a garden in Kensington that had a U.S. bank lien and was then acquired by a developer. That is not a scalable or equitable way to resolve this. This is a moment for the city to figure out how to take control of its land bank back and to be intentional around supporting community-oriented land uses that help the city to achieve its goals around crime reduction, affordable housing, access to green space, food access, and climate change resiliency. This involves both short and long-term measures. To reduce harm, we need the city to work with the Sheriff's Office, U.S. Bank, and Linebarger to figure out how to halt the sale of garden properties until there is a longer-term solution. We then need the city to work with U.S. Bank and Linebarger to create a clear pathway by which nonprofits that have been maintaining open spaces can acquire them outright without bidding against speculators at public auction. And in the long term, it would be of greatest benefit to the city to do a bulk purchase of these liens to gain control of them. However, if the city is unable to allocate funds to purchase all the liens, then we should target community green spaces and potential affordable housing project sites as priorities. The city should amend its acquisition policies to allow the land bank to pay off U.S. bank liens to acquire these parcels and fully fund the land bank so that it has the capacity to acquire and dispose of land at the scale which is needed today. NGT is a committed partner to the city and to the gardeners across the city. We're excited to be a partner in the implementation of the urban agriculture plan, which is, I know, nearing completion. And again, we're just really grateful for the attention you're putting into this urgent issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and thank you for all of your hard work on this issue. Justin Treza, I see you there. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Justin Treza. Good morning, City Council members. Thank you again for this opportunity to submit testimony on the vital need to preserve and protect community gardens and green spaces in Philadelphia. Again, my name is Justin Treza. I'm the Director of Community Gardens for the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. PHS's purpose is to use horticulture to advance health and well-being. We believe in the power of horticulture to make positive social and environmental change. We know that the city is facing real acute quality of life issues, from gun violence to the cleanliness of our streets to the health and well-being of our citizens, and that these challenges disproportionately impact neighborhoods home to Black and Brown people. We urge you to consider the fact that preserving and protecting community gardens and investing in other green solutions are effective ways to address these issues and increase equity in the neighborhoods most impacted by them. Put simply, when we lose these spaces, often to unchecked development compounded by a lack of clear pathways to garden preservation, we lose some of our ability to fight many of our most pressing civic priorities and problems. For over 50 years, PHS has worked alongside farmers and gardens in Philadelphia to help them create healthier, more close-knit and resilient communities. At PHS, we believe urban agriculture, particularly community gardens, are essential to our city's civic infrastructure and play a prominent role in addressing multiple individual and community health issues. Over the years, the network of gardens we work with has grown to over 165 sites in neighborhoods throughout the city. We help ensure their vitality and success by providing growing materials like soil and seedlings, technical assistance, and even capital improvements to garden infrastructure. Of these sites, over 125 receive over 250,000 organically grown vegetable seedlings a year, which results in tens of thousands of pounds of produce that is then distributed to food cupboards and pantries, churches, and communities experiencing food apartheid. The need for this support has been put into high relief by the ongoing pandemic, as we saw the injustices of our broken food system only worsen as corner stores closed or families experienced loss of income. According to a 2020 report by the Institute for Policy Research, during the COVID-19 crisis, rate of food insecurity among Black households with children are nearly twice as high as they are among white households with children. Gardens like Harts Lane Farm in Kensington and Five Loaves Two Fish in Hestonville are examples of community-led sites that seek food justice solutions, and according to Baltimore-based pediatrician Dr. Alicia Morgan Cooper, provide, quote, community-based solutions to accessing and controlling food that are humanizing, fair, healthy, accessible, racially equitable, environmentally sound, and just. The benefits of gardens extend well beyond our local food system. In fact, creating and protecting community gardens and green spaces are also proven ways to improve public safety and reduce gun violence. Recent research conducted by Dr. Gina South and others at the University of Pennsylvania in partnership with PHS has shown that by cleaning and greening vacant, trash-strewn lots in the highest need neighborhoods, we can reduce crime by up to 29%. In the same study, residents of neighborhoods with clean and green lots also reported feeling safer and less depressed. As Dr. South noted in her recent New York Times op-ed, quote, without changing the physical spaces in which crime occurs, violence prevention efforts are incomplete. Unfortunately, the ability of gardens to deliver these and other benefits is urgently threatened by the existence of private bank liens on many garden parcels and a lack of transparent policies and procedures for land acquisition by gardeners. We urgently need the city to address these land issues and seek solutions that, one, halt the sale of gardens and green spaces at sheriff sale, two, create pathways for nonprofits and community groups to acquire these properties, and three, prioritize land for gardens and open spaces when development does happen. It is vital that these steps be taken so that we can ensure that these spaces remain intact and provide benefits like healthy food to hundreds of neighborhoods and thousands of families across Philadelphia. Residents across the city invest their sweat equity to turn vacant land into community gardens that build community, produce food, and reduce crime. Support services for these gardens are few and threats to their survival everywhere. Organizations like PHS, our partner Neighborhood Gardens Trust, Soil Generation, and many others that you're hearing from today are working hard to preserve land and support community gardens and the people that maintain them. We need your help to continue this work. A simple suggestion to start would be to invest a modest sum, around $2 million per year over 3 years, to permanently preserve land for 25 community gardens in the city and improve garden infrastructure and an additional 75 community gardens to ensure these spaces remain vital contributors to the health of neighborhoods across the city. We should support these spaces and the people who steward them by making capital improvements to enhance safety, vitality, and accessibility, in particular by repairing fences and sidewalks, installing irrigation and wash stations, and providing amenities for residents like new signage and shade structures. Once again, thank you, and we appreciate the time today.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and thank you for your advocacy and your work as well. Andy Toy, are you there and connected?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, good to see you this morning.
Nice to see you.
Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Sure, my name is Andy Toy. Good morning, Chairperson Gautier and members of City Council's Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homeless. Thank you, Councilmember Brooks, for pushing this conversation forward. And good morning, Councilman Jones, my old friend and colleague. My name is Andy Toy, and I am the Policy Director for the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations, or better known as PACDC. Thank you for listening to PACDC's testimony regarding resolution number 210838 that addresses our need to find solutions to preserving community gardens and open spaces in Philadelphia, as well as a broader issue of properties currently tied up with real estate liens sold many years ago. Just tying together the last two speakers, actually, as someone who has worked closely with our great local organizations, Neighborhood Gardens Trust, thank you, Jenny Greenberg, PHS, thank you, Justin Treza and PHS, and Councilman Squilla, on the amazing growing home gardens in South Philly. I saw how important the preservation of these critical assets are to the health and well-being of the community, especially in the last 19 months during the pandemic. The process of assembling lots for a community garden is already very complex and challenging. Adding on uncertainty caused by having these liens, which may be higher than the current value of the properties, makes it even more difficult for communities to make deeper investments of time, equity, sweat equity, and money to improve these properties. In a more general way, the properties tied up in the lien sale have been a detriment to the predominantly low-income BIPOC neighborhoods where they are located, because these properties cannot be easily redeveloped for affordable housing, small businesses, gardens, or community space. The fact that there are still around 2,300 properties encumbered by these tax liens 24 years later indicates that these properties have been in and still can remain in limbo. In fact, when the tax lien sale was proposed for a short-term gain, some of us were actually old enough to remember that, in working in city government at the time, we had concerns that this is exactly what might happen in the longer term. PACD calls on the city to spend the resources to reacquire all of these properties, or at least find ways to target those properties currently being utilized or which have plans to be utilized positively within communities for parks, open spaces, affordable housing, gardens, whatever it may be. We agreed that one part of the solution would be to authorize the land bank to acquire lien sales, acquire the lien sales at at sheriff sale, which was what Angel Rodriguez was talking about. Right now, there is a ban on that within the requirements of the land bank. Um, this this also requires levels of funding that we see as important investments in our communities. Some of this will be returned in tax revenues over time as properties are redeveloped. Um, we are not collecting any tax revenues right now on any of these properties as they just rack up tax debt, current tax debt, as well as the liens that are sitting out there. More importantly, it will positively impact other properties and neighbors around these vacant properties when ownership and responsibilities are clear, and these properties are promptly and positively reused and redeveloped as assets within their communities. So thank you for the time, and happy to be part of this and help push it forward.
Thank you for your testimony, but also your long work on this issue. Andrea Bibaloni, are you there and connected? Good morning, Madam Chair Gauthier and members of the committee. My name is Andrea Bibaloni, and I'm an attorney in the Consumer Housing Unit of Philadelphia Legal Assistance. My focus is helping residents with claims to home-adjacent, tax-delinquent side and rear lots save their properties from impending sheriff sales and assert their ownership interests. This work is a new initiative at PLA made possible by a public interest fellowship sponsored by the Independence Foundation, begun in recognition of the fact that helping homeowners gain legal title to yards they cleaned and transformed into safe spaces during decades of neglect is a step toward building wealth equity and resisting displacement due to rampant gentrification. Home to the city's poorest families, North Philadelphia's Latinx neighborhoods have been historically disinvested due to racist redlining policies and lack of economic opportunity. In Kensington, where I and many of my clients live, the vacant lots residents have transformed into gardens and patios were once abandoned, dangerous crime magnets. The yards are a green space that improves our community and provides space to grow healthy food and hold family functions. The yards have also become a part of the residents' homes, and together with their houses, their only source of accumulated wealth. Now, they provide sorely needed outdoor space during the pandemic, but they are rapidly being seized for new development. There are two broad categories of people that this issue affects. One, record owners who own properties and consider them their entire homestead, but for some reason, the rear or side lot is a separate parcel from the home. And two, homeowners who are not the record owners, but have cared for the adjacent parcel for so long that they've established an equitable ownership interest under the law. In many cases, this is more than 21 years. Typically, my clients have been searching for guidance on how to pay the outstanding taxes on their home adjacent yards and clarify the title to their properties for years without any luck. In many cases, title to the property and OPA accounts are in the names of long gone or deceased persons, and the address of the record owner is not the home address of the current occupant, so they never receive notice of legal actions on the property. This means properties are regularly sold without any notice to those who cared for these spaces for years. These clients are not eligible for affordable monthly payments to address the delinquencies under the owner-occupied payment agreement program
because the city does not consider these properties part of their homestead, and in some cases, their name is not yet on the deed. The client who wants to save their yard from a tax sale is left with very limited options. Either send payments to the Department of Revenue for the account of an absentee owner and hope for the best, or find a lawyer who can ask the city for a standard payment agreement, which requires a 50% down payment upfront. For most of my low-income clients, this is impossible because it requires a lump sum payment of thousands of dollars. To make matters worse, many of the properties are encumbered by U.S. bank liens. In order for a client to obtain a standard payment agreement for the outstanding city taxes on such properties, as was mentioned earlier this morning, they must first pay off the U.S. bank balance. This means that if the city or a collection firm has already filed a tax foreclosure to collect the outstanding debt on a client's property, the only way they can avoid a tax sale is to come up with the full amount of the U.S. bank debt so that they may then be allowed to enter into a standard payment agreement for the tax debt held by the Department of Revenue. That amount can range anywhere from a couple $100s to tens of thousands of dollars. None of this, I should add, is even possible without a letter from an attorney stating the facts of the client's ownership interest in the property. Funding to pay down the U.S. bank liens would remove a major barrier to residents keeping their whole homestead. Lastly, it's important to understand the consequences of proceeding with tax sales on home-adjacent properties without providing a clear pathway for an owner with an equitable interest to resolve the outstanding debt. One of my clients, Migdalia, who you'll hear from later this afternoon, kindly gave me her permission to share her story with you. Migdalia is a homeowner who sustained serious damage to the foundation of her home when a home-adjacent side lot was sold at a sheriff's sale a couple of years ago. She had cleaned and maintained the lot next to her house since 1989, using it as a garden and a patio area for family gatherings. Then one day, a developer knocked on her door and told her to get all of her belongings off the property because he said he owned it. They proceeded to build a 3-story condo next to her modest 2-story home, causing cracks that reach from the basement all the way up to the second floor of her house. I'm working with Migdalia to secure her ownership interest in the lots on the other side of her home because she is afraid that if they're sold, her house will literally crumble. Thank you, Councilmember Brooks, for the opportunity to testify this morning and for taking the time to consider the barriers and solutions to permanently preserving community gardens and open spaces in our city's most vulnerable communities.
Thank you so much for your testimony and for your work. Councilmember Brooks.
Yes, my questions are for everyone that was in a part of this panel. I want to thank you for your work and your testimony today. Some of you mentioned this in your testimony, but just so that we have it all in one place, what steps would you suggest the city take in both short and long term to prevent the continued loss of community gardens and open lots?
And that's open to whomever from the panel.
Yeah, open to whomever.
I'm sorry, Councilmember, my internet cut out. Would you mind repeating that question, please?
Yeah, several of you guys mentioned in your testimony. So my question is what steps would you suggest the city take in both short and long term to try to prevent the continued loss of community gardens and open lots? And a part two to that, are there other cities we should be looking at to model when it comes to preserving community gardens and open lots?
I think for me, I'm just going to jump in here. I think the primary thing that needs to happen is some sort of dialogue has to be initiated with the lien holder, because we've kind of talked about this, but even if the city pays off the liens tomorrow, there's still no pathway to ownership, and these gardens are still at risk because there's still, tax balances on them. So they could still potentially go to sheriff's sale, and the people who are working on them could still potentially not get them. And now we just have a lower barrier of entry for developers. So I really think that one of the most important things is, one, figuring out sort of what the long-term solution is going to be in terms of what happens with the liens overall. But first and foremost, there needs to be some sort of way to create a pathway to ownership. So whether that's funding and staffing the land bank, so they have the ability to acquire these properties once the liens are paid off, whether that is working directly with US Bank and Linebarger to create some sort of process where people who are currently working and maintaining the gardens can, state an interest in the property and, and work with them directly to come up with a payment plan situation so we can avoid sheriff sale in the interim period. I think there are a lot of options, but I really think it's critical that that be something that's considered as part of the strategy, because again, if there is no pathway to ownership, we're just going to end up with a different variation of the same problem.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I think we mentioned the fact that if the land bank can acquire the properties at sheriff sale, if they do actually go through sheriff sale with the tax lien on, with the lien holder on them, the tax lien actually, yeah, that we could acquire them at the sheriff sale. Right now, you can't. The land bank cannot bid on them if there is that other lien on it because it's a priority lien. And then, I would say that the sheriff's sale is as the revenue person said, it is a way to clear the title and have a clean title. So somehow you have to have a clear title at the end of the day. Otherwise, there's always this stuff that's hanging out there. So if we could acquire the properties at sheriff's sale, I think that's a really good way to clear the title.
Thank you.
So I very much agree with Ebony and Andy in terms of the longer term solution. One thing that jumped out at me listening to the testimony earlier from the sheriff's office was the fact that the work that community members have been doing on these spaces for all these years could count as a legal interest. I mean, I am aware of multiple situations where residents have been maintaining and caring for lots, and an effort was made to reach out to Linebarger to pause the sheriff's sale, and they went ahead anyway. So if there is, it's sort of in the short term sort of harm reduction, if there's a way to work with the courts, if we have to go there, that was something I learned today that's important for us to know and to think about more. Council member, in terms of your question about, I guess, best practices in other cities in the country, I did want to mention Chicago. Chicago has a land trust organization called Chicago Neighbor Space that's protected over 120 gardens around the city. And a couple of things to note. One is in terms of a funding mechanism, they have an open space impact fee. So the program allocates fees that are applied to new residential developments to pay for land acquisition and park improvements across the city. I think that is a very intriguing idea, recognizing the broad benefit that these spaces have been shown to provide. And then another thing to note is that they have a large lot program which sells vacant residential lots owned by the city for $1 to be used for beautification, including community gardens. And, their program does not have the burdensome 30-year mortgage requirement that Philadelphia has added to theirs.
Just to add, sorry.
Go ahead.
Just to add to what Jenny was saying, I think in terms of loss prevention, there needs to be a way for a resident to register their interest in the property with the proper entities so that they actually know what's happening with the property, and the courts, the city can be made aware that this person is an interested party with an equitable interest. And in terms of other programs in other cities, in addition to the Chicago program that Jenny mentioned, I'm aware that Cleveland and Detroit also have side lot programs, sometimes transferring properties with quitclaim deeds, which is much less burdensome than the current process that we have with the land bank.
Oops. Thank you all for your.
I just wanted to.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Or add one more thing here. So canvassing the land has been like a grand task for us at Iglesias Garden. We've done what we can with the group of people that we have there. But ideally, if we have more resources in that area, so that we know what the land actually looks like in regards to the U.S. Bank lien lots. And then I don't know if someone here is from PHA, but our garden has a few lots that sit in our garden, and we would like to start a conversation with them in regards to those lots. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. We'll add your request to our list of concerns that we got earlier.
Sorry, just to reinforce what Michael said, the process of ground truthing, which is like going out to check on these lots and see what's going on, is really essential and quite labor intensive. You can't tell from Google Maps what's going on, and you actually need someone trained to take a look, because just in the past 2 weeks, we're aware of a situation where PHDC was moving forward to sell a parcel they believed was vacant and overgrown. And when we saw the photo that had been taken of what was characterized as overgrown weeds, it was kale and tomatoes. So if there's opportunities for the stakeholders and folks who are doing this work to be involved, I think that would be really beneficial.
Thank you. Thank you all for your insight. Madam Chair, that ends my line of questioning.
Thank you so much, Council Member. And are there any additional questions or comments from members of the committee for this panel? Okay, there being none, I'd like to note that I need to step away for other council business and would like to transfer chair duties to my colleague, Councilmember Brooks, for the remainder of the hearing. And I also just want to thank you again, Councilmember. This is such an important conversation for my district, but for so many communities in the city. So thank you. And, you have my commitment and my partnership to continue working on this issue and protecting our valuable community spaces. And thanks so much to everyone who testified today as well. Have a good day, everybody.
You too. Have a great day, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes panel testimony for this resolution. We will now begin hearing from individuals who registered to provide public comment. Ms. Shur, would you please read the name of the first person registered for public comment?
Yes. Good afternoon. Jamie Dennings, could you please state your name and proceed with your testimony?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Modesto from Council Support. We're going to need a few minutes so we can get the public participants connected via Teams.
Thank you, Modesto.
Madam Chair, council members, and participants, we are now live.
Thank you. That concludes the panel testimony for this resolution. We will now begin hearing from individuals who registered to provide public comment. Ms. Schultz, would you please read the name of the first person registered for public comment?
Jamie Dennings, could you please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony?
Hello? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, good morning. I'm prepared. Should I start?
Yes, can you please state your name and proceed with your testimony, please?
Yes, I can. Jamie Denning. The lot that I'm calling about is 1420 North Vodger Street. This is a very high crime community and neighborhood. We have shootings on a regular, as you guys know, in Philadelphia. My street is also sandwiched between two very busy and dangerous streets where there are always shootings and possible hit and run and drug dealers. The little street also has a lot of drug dealers that run up and down our street all the time. The lot that we have provided for the children is the only safe place that they have to play. The masoneries on my block have done cement work to make it very nice for the children. I, along with other parents, have taken our money and time and effort to maintain the lot to keep it nice for the children so they have somewhere to play. It was very ironic that not too long ago when this lot went up for sale, it was another shooting on the block, and the children run to the lot for safety. They consider it their fortress, and they consider it their safe place to play. Our children have not been hit on our block by the cars or anything because they all play in the lot. To lose the lot would mean to lose a lot for our children on this block and on this community. Philadelphia doesn't give our kids a lot, but if we can have this lot for them, it would mean so much more than just another house. It would mean safety, save lives, and when we save the lives of our children, we save generations. And one house, one more house, does not mean more than one life of one of our children. We are willing to continue to invest our money, time, and effort to keep it clean, to keep it maintained, and to keep it safe. We've already invested thousands of dollars into keeping that lot safe and to keeping it clean and maintained. And we would like to keep it for our children. And that concludes my testimony.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dennings. Ms. Schultz, could you read the name of the next person registered for public comment?
The next person is Jovian Patterson.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Can you please state your name and proceed with testimony?
Yes, my name is Jovian Patterson. First, I want to say I appreciate the opportunity to speak here today and give my testimony. I also appreciate the fact that this panel has been put together to address this issue in general. Just a little backstory. So I was born and raised in Southwest Philadelphia on the 5600 block of Woodland Avenue on Allison Street, which is the same place that we have our community garden. I grew up on that block. I didn't write anything down, so I'm just speaking. So basically, I grew up on that block, and I moved away from the block for a while, came back, and it was a lot of condemned houses there that basically turned into the lot. And it was there, I want to say it's been there in that current state for about 25 years. So me and a partner of mine, we came back, we seen the lands. I think the addresses are between 1831 and I want to say 1841. And we put a community garden on that area there. We spent our own money. And we also started a nonprofit organization. A nonprofit organization is there to benefit American people of color,
American Indians and Indigenous Americans. We also want to expand that onto not only the community garden, but also low-income housing to prevent the gentrification. A lot of things that was spoke on today with this panel. Like everybody know, we just want to reiterate the need to have these kind of things in our community. That particular area is really nothing there. A lot of the other than on Allison Street, a lot of the other houses have been condemned. There's a whole bunch of abandoned buildings just in general, and we want to just help beautify that area. We also want to teach the gardening for home gardening. We also want to teach and build up people in the community to not only garden but also be able to create low income housing. So it's a lot of things that you guys were speaking about today that we're about with our organization. And I just want to put that out to you guys that we do want to uplift the community, and as everyone stated, it is a need for to have these community gardens so we can be self-sustaining for people in the community and just have our areas not gentrified because it pushes people who are low income out of the area, like we all know. So I just wanted to say my piece. And one thing, because I was listening for a while, and one thing that I know that we could utilize that could help at least pay for some of the liens, whether it's through the U.S. Bank or just basically any liens on the property, is possibly state funding. It's something that can be looked into. I looked up a few things because I do have a nonprofit, and I noticed there were some things that could be given for like municipalities in general for large community projects. So that's something that folks can look into. Other than that, I pretty just wanted to say my piece, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Ms. Schultz, can you please read the name of the next person registered for public comment?
Samantha Siegel.
Good morning. This is Samantha Siegel. Am I ready to proceed?
Yes. Could you please state your name and proceed with your testimony?
Yes. Good morning. My name is Samantha Siegel. The lot that I'm speaking about is 242 West Rittenhouse Street, District 8 in Councilwoman Bass's district. When I purchased my home in 2018, the lot next to us, which is a lot that takes up the entirety of our property next to us, once attached to it, to my home, was another side. It was a duplex. It burnt down, and the lot that we're speaking about had become a dumping ground for many, many years. It has a long history of neighbors taking it over, turning it into a garden or a public space, and then sort of falling back into this same pattern. We had spent 2 years trying to work with Councilwoman Bass's office, as well as any agency from the city that we could, to buy the lot and reform it, turn it into a garden in a way that would preserve this gathering space and honor the people who came before us. We did not have any luck with that. The lot was extremely dangerous. It was a dumping place for many contractors. There were many, many violations there. It was also a place where a local car shop was dumping tires as well as oil directly into the earth. There are 2 trees that are still up that are falling into elderly neighbors' houses and another onto the street and sidewalk. And we were not able to find anyone from the city to help us remove these until they fell through the person's house. Last year, during the start of the pandemic, multiple neighbors came together, and by hand, we cleared the entire lot as a project to help bring us together during a very scary time. We cleared the entire lot, leveled it, put up a fence, and created 10 garden beds. Those garden beds represented a lot for all of us. They brought us together. We met each other. This is a block that is heavily trafficked, heavily gentrifying, with a very historical block with many neighbors who have lived here for decades. And it was a way for us to come together, meet each other, and share food. The front of the lot, like was said earlier, has become a play space for children. Everybody that has come together has invested a significant amount of money, thousands of dollars, in building raised beds, building a fence, bringing in dirt that wasn't contaminated, testing the dirt to see if it was safe, and then, of course, growing food together.
This area, this lot, before we did this, was a space where there were children coming through that were going to Mastery Charter, cutting school. We found needles there. We found people there who were high on drugs. We found children were cutting school and getting high in the lot. We also, like I said, had dumping. It was not a safe place. I have 2 children of my own, so as you can imagine, living next to this, it was extremely important that we cleaned it up. Since then, we have had 2 years of exceptional community gatherings in this space, despite the pandemic. We have learned so much about each other. This is a heavily gentrified block. I myself definitely represent that gentrification. And what we've done is come and sat down and been able to share stories, share meals, meet each other's children's grandparents. It is a trans-generational space, critical. We have multiple multifamily units, my own home included. This is a converted multifamily home. We don't need another one. If I had known what I knew when I bought this house, what it was doing to the infrastructure of the street, I would have thought twice. There is not enough parking. There is not enough space. So we cannot, under any circumstance, have any more apartment buildings go on, or homes go here. There is not anywhere to park. There's not anywhere to go, and there's nowhere for people to gather. People are being pushed out of their homes because of the rising prices of rent. It is not fair. What we need is spaces for us to continue to gather. These public spaces help stop the violence in the neighborhood. We know we have gun violence here in Germantown and all over the city. It also serves as a space for us to connect and be together. And I hope that the City Council considers the important nature of the food and the gathering and being together as a public safety benefit. Yesterday, Councilwoman Bass and others gathered here in Germantown to talk about public safety. One of the best community-led efforts are our community gardens. They stop crime, they help us learn about each other, and they bring us closer as a community. I see absolutely no reason to take public lots that are in use and doing good things in this community and turn them into some kind of cookie cutter apartment building sold to a developer who doesn't care about this space. And I know that each of you do care. And I hope, and I know everyone on this call cares. And these people here who are doing good, we want you to save these spaces with us so that we can continue to be a part of that public safety effort and be a part of positive ways to help to support the infrastructure of our city. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for hearing us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Siegel. Ms. Schultz, can you please read the name of the next person registered for public comment?
Major Leah Mendez.
Good morning. My name is Migdalia Mendez. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony?
My name is Migdalia Mendez. I live at 415 West Houston Street, 19122. Andrea was talking about me earlier, about my problem with my house. Since they built a house next to mine, they did a lot of damage to my house. My house is out of her foundation. I called the license inspection. They sent an inspector just to make sure I was safe living in here. I'm trying to get 2 lots. That's the only 2 lots next to my house, 417 and 419. Because I don't want to make another house next to mine because I'm going to lose my house. And a good friend of mine is willing to pay the back taxes for those 2 lots if they gave me the ownership. I don't want to lose my house for this development that they only make the thing over here worse. This is a very small street, 2-way. There's no 2-way anymore because there are more houses, more cars than people living in this part of the city. So I just want for anyone so they can help me. I tried to call Maria Quiñones. They told me that she can help me about the lot on 413. I called her office and the secretary just asked me why I need that lot. She didn't ask me for no name and no address, and she hung up on me. 2 weeks ago, I reached uh, Angel Cruz. I sent him a message. Until today, I haven't heard for him either. I just want help so I can't lose my house. I don't have nowhere to go. I can pay rent or I can pay any mortgage. I've been living here for more than 30 years, and I'm on the only one I have been taking care of this lot. So I'm there. She's my lawyer, and she's the one who helped me to try to get this lot. If I can pay the back that they own the lot, uh, if they can give me the ownership, I'd be grateful for that. So I just need your help. Um, I don't want to lose my house. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Ms. Schultz, can you read the name of the next person registered for public comment?
Leah Cloud. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. Please state your name and proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Leah Clouden. Um, I'm I'm speaking on behalf of the lot next to my house at 310 North 53rd Street. We are the only house on the block. We're surrounded by, I guess, on the other side, it's probably about 8 tracts of land that is unoccupied, and on the other side of us, I guess it would be the left, there is 1 tract of land which is directly next to our house. And we've been taking care of this lot for over 30 years, my parents and I. My dad was cutting the grass all the time until he got sick, probably about less than 10 years ago. He was a retiree of the school district of Philadelphia. He got sick from one of the schools. So we've been putting a lot into just making sure that the lot stays clear. Once he got sick, we were able to call 311 and get somebody to come out and cut it. I guess they
Madam Chair, she dropped the line. We're going to try to call her back.
Okay, should we move on to the next person while they try to get her back? Ms. Schultz, can you please read the name of the next person registered?
Yes,
Hello?
Sorry, Josue Rodriguez.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Good
Hear me?
afternoon. Can you please state your name and proceed with your testimony?
My name is Josue Rodriguez, and I'm a father, son, and lifelong member of the Kensington community. I'd like to thank you all for all that each of you has done in this effort to serve the communities that many of us call home. Seems like we've had this conversation often, haven't we? That of out-of-touch developers versus the people of the community. That of the outrage that is felt when those with all the power choose to wield it against those without. We have heard and will hear countless testimonies of residents who have had to deal with the loss of the safe spaces that these gardens, side yards, and green spaces represent. We have heard also of the costs and damages incurred to homeowners as a result of irresponsible builders, of homes, roadways, and peace of mind being sacrificed for constructs that likely won't outlive the tax breaks that have spurred this race to injustice. My story is much the same. For over 30 years, members of our community and caretakers of our side yard, which we have maintained as a green space and garden. Many adults my age can remember swimming in the pools that my father set up every summer, and many of our neighbors have eaten my mother's tomatoes or benefited from her sound advice. Growing up in an inner city, Children are often taught to play with these. Our yard, much like many, is a safe space for not only my neighbors as children, but hopefully for my children and their friends, whose turn it is to explore their well-housed garden. And it is for them that we're fighting today and every day. For all of our youth who have yet to have had their birthday parties, their summer lunches, and events in a place close to home that is reserved for the whole community. And for our elderly who have spent their lives building these gardens, toiling away daily to nurture them, and share the joy of the youth who have come to enjoy and appreciate their long years of work and sacrifice. And still, time and again we have had these talks. Time and again we have fought this fight. Time and again we have heard said the government is a thing for and of the people. Well, if that's true, then there's work left to be done to save the spirits of our communities, even as we all seek to beautify and modernize our cities. We all welcome the progress that comes from bringing new life and business. However, as it relates to these vacant lots, even homes, we should be buying back the U.S. bank liens and begin and in tax incentives to local residents who have built their communities from the inside out, and to create a system or committee that ensures that these green spaces have a fighting chance. Let's empower the caretakers so that we are in writing what we have already earned with our labor. Time and again, we have said that government is for and of the people. So here we are again with this message to our elected officials who must be the shields that guard citizens from forces too powerful for us to fight alone. Are we not the people? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Ms. Sherd, can you please read the name
Madam
of the
Chair,
next person registered for?
we have Leah back on the line.
Oh, thank you. Leah, can you
Yes.
please resume your testimony?
Yes, thank you. What I wanted to say is that because this land at 310 North 53rd Street has been abandoned, we are now people are now writing graffiti on the side of our house. They're dumping anything you can think of. They're dumping trash, dead animals in trash bags, construction debris, everything that everybody else is having dumped on the lots next to their house. Like I said, we've owned our property since '83, and the property next to us has been abandoned or has been torn down since the '90s, and the people are deceased. There is no heir, so we tried to acquire or purchase it, and we were not able to. We got it pushed to the sheriff's cell. It was on the sheriff's cell, and then it was pulled. So we have no idea what's going on with the land next to our house, but we're trying to purchase it or acquire it. And we have over 30 years of sweat equity put into this land. And we wanted to put a gate up just to stop people from walking through. I found people walking through. There are bodies that I had to call the police because I thought it was dead bodies behind the house where the lot is. And they just were asleep or whatever. We have a lot of homeless people now because I'm surrounded by lots. So I don't know what else there is to do, but we're asking for help. We're asking for that land. We didn't have a problem with paying a fee. We understand that, but it can't be astronomical for something that we've already put 30 years into. It's just not fair. It's not fair what's happening to our community. So I ask that you please buy back the U.S. bank loans. Help us. We're surrounded by lots, and it's becoming more and more throughout our community. I have the RDA already on the other side with the 8 tracts of land that is on the other side. So I'm asking for 310 North 53rd Street for the time that our family has put into this lot, trying to keep all the riffraff and everything else away from our community. We're the only house on the block, which is 53rd Street. So I thank you for your time and adding me back to the call.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Ms. Short, can you please read the name of the next person registered for public comment?
Karen Phillips.
She is not on the line. We were not able to get a hold of her.
Thank you. Can you read the name of the next person registered?
Angie Romsell.
She also just recently hung up. The next person that we have available is Miss Duran.
Okay. Ms. Schutz, could you read the name of the next person registered?
Simona Reyes Duran.
Simona Reyes Duran.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Can you please state your name and proceed with your testimony?
Buenas tardes. ¿Podría decirnos su nombre y luego continuar con su testimonio?
Mi nombre es Simona Reyes Durán.
My name is Simona Reyes Duran. Interpreter is going to ask her to begin. Señora, puede empezar.
Ok. Mi motivo es sobre el bloque mío. Yo vivo en la 208 East Wisher, Filadelfia, Pensilvania.
The issue why I'm calling is because of the block where I live. I live at 208 East Wishen in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
19134.
¿Cómo?
Pico 19134.
And the zip code is 19134.
Mi problema es que yo tengo una yarda detrás de mi casa.
The issue is that I have a yard. The issue is that I have a yard at the back of the house for over 20.
Por más de 20 años.
For over 20 years.
Dándole mantenimiento.
I've been maintaining it.
Cuidándola.
Taking care of it.
Y yo quiero comprarla porque no quiero que otra persona la compre.
And I like to purchase it. I don't want another person to purchase it.
Yo busqué un abogado.
I looked for an attorney.
Y fui al City Hall.
I went to City Hall.
Dice que debía de estarse 4,100 y algo.
I think that it has to provide 4,100 something.
El abogado fue a pagar el dinero de los taxes.
The attorney went to pay for the money for the taxes.
Y no lo aceptaron.
But they didn't accept it.
Porque di que lo tiene un banco.
Because they claim that a bank has it.
El banco se deben 11,000 y pico de dólares.
And the bank is owed $11,000+.
Y quiero que entremos en un acuerdo porque yo quiero comprarla. Yo no quiero que nadie se entre ahí en esa yarda.
And I am calling because I would like to come to an agreement so I can purchase that space. I don't want anybody else to get into that yard.
Porque tengo demasiado años con esa yarda.
Because it's been way too many years that I've been upkeeping and maintaining that area.
Y me interesa comprarla.
And I'd like to purchase it.
Eso es todo y gracias. Que tengan un bonito día.
That's all, and thank you. May you have a nice day.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Muchas gracias por su testimonio.
Ms. Schultz, can you please read the name of the next person registered for public comment?
Evelyn Valcarcel.
Evelyn Valcarcel.
Sí, aquí estoy.
Yes, I'm right here.
Good afternoon. Can you please state your name and proceed with your testimony?
Buenas tardes. ¿Podría decir su nombre y continuar con su testimonio?
Sí, mi nombre es Evelyn Barcarcer y vivo en el bloque 708 West Russell.
My name is Evelyn Valcarcel, and I live in 708 block West Russell.
Sí, y me mudé a esta casa como alrededor como en 1997
And I moved there back in 1997.
y cuando me mudé ahí hay un terreno de 4 casas, pero quedaban 2 casas que estaban demolidas ya para caerse.
So when I moved, they were like there was a lot of about 4 homes, but there were still 2 houses that need to be demolished.
Mucha basura, muchos ratones, muchos carros robados, mucha goma.
A lot of trash, a lot of mice, a lot of stolen cars, a lot of tires, abandoned cars.
Cada semana traían un carro robado, le quitaban todo, después le pegaban fuego, no podía seguir viviendo así.
Every week, they would just bring a new car that was stolen. They would take everything apart, and then they would light it up on fire. I just couldn't live like that.
So, vinieron, tumbaron las 2 casas, pregunté cómo era mejor para yo obtener los patios, me enviaron para el 1234 de Market Street.
So I couldn't live like that anymore. I asked about the yard, and they told me that I should go to 1234 Market Street.
So, fui allá, no me dejaron en nada, me dijeron que fuera a un programa que se llama Impact, que está en la calle Indiana, que comprara una cerca usada y la pusiera.
So then they really weren't able to help me. They referred me to a program called Impact, and that's where they told me that I should go, and I should probably that was located in Indiana, and they told me that I should probably put a used fence up.
Y entonces decidí ir a Home Depot y gasté alrededor de $3,000 en la verja y material y cosas. Y cerqué mi patio de cuatro lotes.
So I purchased about $3,000 worth of fence from Home Depot with materials, and I was able to fence the area of the 4 lots.
Sí, entonces desde ese año, creo que ya van como 25, 26 años, he mantenido el patio.
So it's been about 25 to 26 years that I have been maintaining the yard.
Lo usamos para los niños del bloque, las actividades de verano.
We use it for the kids in the block for activities during the summer.
Sembramos tomates, papas, tenemos un árbol de cherry.
We plant tomatoes, potatoes. We have a cherry tree.
Guardamos la bicicleta de los niños, le ponemos la piscina a los niños.
We store the bikes for the kids there. We also have a pool for the kids there.
Más, sabe que siempre hay mucha basura aquí. Recolectamos botellas plásticas y las latas de refresco y las vendemos para costear el patio porque hay que recortarle la grama, todas esas cosas, la gente tirando basura.
So we recycle the cans as well as the plastics around, and that's what the money that we generate, we use it to upkeep the patio, to mow the lawn, or pick up the trash.
Porque al pasar de los años, como todo siempre ha subido, pues me sale caro recortar el área. A veces tengo voluntarios que me ayudan.
Years, and since prices have been increasing, I'm not able to pay for all that. Sometimes I do have volunteers who are assisting with it, but most of the times I do not.
Y he tratado de ir a la ciudad para comprarlo, pero siempre dicen que le pertenece a este, que le pertenece al otro, y nunca me dicen nada para yo poder comprarlo. Yo quisiera comprarlo para los nietos míos.
And I have tried to purchase the land. I have gone to the city, and they say that it belongs to this one or it belongs to someone, but nobody's ever able to give me a straight answer. I would like to purchase it for my grandkids.
Y quiero darle las gracias al equipo de jardín que, que están tratando de ayudar a la comunidad y a las personas así como yo que han mantenido un patio por años.
And
Que,
I would like to thank the people from Jardín or Garden for the help that they have been able to maintain the yard over the years.
y gracias por escucharme.
And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Muchas gracias por su testimonio.
Ms. Charles, can you please read the name of the next person registered for public comment?
Virgen Figueroa.
Virgen Figueroa.
Aquí estoy.
I'm right here.
Can you please state your name and proceed with your testimony?
¿Podría declarar su nombre y continuar con su testimonio?
Ok, mi nombre es Virgen Flores Figueroa.
My name is Virgen Flores Figueroa.
La aviso mía es que yo vivo aquí en el 3334 norte de Loren. Entonces estaba luchando la yarda que cuando yo y mi esposo compramos esta casa, pues eso fue en el 2003, ya la yarda de atrás del 3333 de Orly, estaba junto con la casa. El dueño nunca nos dijo que era separado.
Un momentito,
Pues
un momentito. Okay. My address is 3334 of North Lauren, and I've been fighting about the yard. My husband and I purchased the house, and we have been working on it since 2003. There is in the back of it, the address is 3333 Olney, which is next to the house. Adelante.
Ok, entonces yo estaba luchando porque mandaron una carta del sheriff que la iban a subastar, entonces nosotros fuimos, ya llamamos y todo, yo di el pronto que había que dar, entonces resulta que como la gente está del, ay Dios mío, de lo que dijo la señora, de aquí de una yardita allí, nos ayudó, entonces pues yo estoy luchando la yarda porque no quiero que me la quiten porque la tengo desde el 2003, yo tengo mis 11 nietos.
Okay,
entonces,
un momentito, señor, un momentito. Okay. So the sheriff did have an auction. We did go, we presented ourselves because we wanted to purchase the space. There were some people, actually there was a lady here that was talking earlier and she was able to help us, but you know, I want to fight for it. We have been with the property since 2003 and I have, you know, my grandkids. Adelante.
Entonces, pues, yo llamé al City Hall, me comuniqué con Community, que fuimos personalmente, porque me dijeron que la yarda debe 4,200 y pico, entonces, que también la tiene que un banco que debe 1,000 algo. Entonces nosotros estábamos dispuestos de pagar la deuda, pero nos dijeron que el dueño que era de la yarda, él falleció.
Okay, so we went to City Hall. We wanted to find out more about what is it that we need to do. They referred us to a community person where we were informed that it was owed $4,200 and also that the bank owed about $1,000. We were willing to pay, but then they told us that the owner actually died. Yeah, adelante.
Ajá, entonces que la yarda que tenía heredero, pero que yo sepa desde que nosotros estamos aquí en esta casa que compramos, nunca nadie ha aparecido. Entonces yo quiero la yarda porque me interesa, porque hace años que está con nosotros aquí y yo tengo aquí mis nietos y con la calle yo no puedo tener que mis nietos jueguen.
Well, so apparently, since the person passed away, there is now someone who inherited the property, and it's been many years that I've been trying to find out who this person is. I am worried because there isn't a safe space for my grandkids to play. It's very dangerous on the street.
Entonces, pues, yo quiero saber cómo puedo hacer para comprarla, porque nos interesa.
And what I want to find out is what is it that I need to do so I can make the purchase. I'm interested.
Entonces, pues nosotros íbamos, yo y mi esposo íbamos a pagar los taxes, pero que fuimos a uno de esos de abogados de community que nos mandaron. Entonces ellos dicen que no vale que la pena que nosotros paguemos los taxes porque después vienen los herederos y nos quitan la llave, entonces perdemos el dinero. Entonces, pues ellos me dijeron que tenía que esperar que pusieran la yarda de nuevo para el sheriff, a ver que si el sheriff no podía vender la yarda.
So when we went to the attorneys from community that we were referred, they told us that it's not worth it to make the purchase because the people that inherited the property would be getting the property even if, after we pay for everything, and the best course of action would be to wait until the yard goes up for auction again through the sheriff, and maybe we can go and have a chance there.
Y a mí me dice que yo quiero la yarda porque pues yo quiero para para que mis niños jueguen, entonces poder sembrar y todo, pero que no me atrevo mucho.
So that is the reason why I want to have the purchase of the land, because for my grandkids and also because we want to plant things.
Entonces pues o sea, me da una pena por eso, porque nos quieren quitar la yarda de tanto tiempo y ahí es donde nosotros pasamos el tiempo más, no dentro de la casa, o sea, por la pandemia y todo eso, uno tiene que tener un sitio para no deprimirse ni nada, y siempre que nosotros estamos.
So I'm pretty saddened about this situation because they are planning to take it away, and we do need a space like that so we are not saddened, especially because of the pandemic. We don't want to be depressed.
Y me gustaría que a ver cómo nos pueden ayudar, ¿entiendes? Porque hay mucha gente necesitada de tener sus yarditas y todo, y tener sus niños, porque ahora como oímos mucha criminalidad y eso, hay que proteger a los niños, ¿y entiendes?
So I would really like to see if I can be helped about this, because as you understand, there's a lot of things going on, there's a lot of crime, and you really want to be able to protect your kids.
Eso era todo, y muchas gracias por escucharnos y eso.
That's pretty much everything. And thank you for listening to us. Let's see if there's a way that we can be helped.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Muchas gracias por su testimonio.
Igual.
Likewise.
Ms. Schultz, can you please read the name of the next person registered for public comment?
The last person registered to testify for public comment is Adam Butler.
Hi, my name is Adam Butler. I'll begin my testimony. I'm going to keep it brief because we've heard from so many people who have echoed some of these comments from earlier. But the U.S. bank lien properties have become a gentrification machine. They have led to predatory development and have had a huge negative impact on communities when they have been lost. I also want to respond to some of the comments we heard earlier from both the sheriff and from Linebarger. The sheriff has done no engagement with community groups in terms of trying to identify resolutions for these issues. When we went to the sheriff's office, they met us with 8 armed deputies and told us we weren't allowed to go in and have a conversation with the sheriff. In the follow-up that we have done, we have, the comments that they made about how they are trying to fix or resolve the notification process ring hollow. The sheriff has already announced that there will be a tax foreclosure sale on December 10th. And they indicated earlier that 60 days notice was standard. There's not a single property listed on either sheriff's website or on the Bid for Assets website that will be included in that December 10th sale. They should immediately suspend that sale until the notification issues are resolved. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Butler. Ms. Schultz, are there any other folks listed for public comment?
No, council member, there aren't.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Rudy for your interpretation today. We appreciate it very much. Thank you for staying on and taking care of that for us.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brooks.
There being no other witnesses to testify, I would like to ask, is there anyone else present in the hearing whose name we have failed to call and that wishes to offer testimony on the resolution being considered today?
¿Hay alguien que esté presente en la sala que quisiera dar su testimonio y que no pudieron registrarse para hacerlo?
Hearing none, I want to thank all the panels and witnesses for their participation today. We value your opinion. This concludes the public hearing of the committee, and we will now recess this hearing until the call of the chair. Thank you all very much for your attendance. Have a great day.